A diamond ring slid across the table. 3 dangerous men were closing in, and a stranger had just whispered, "Pretend you're my fiancée, right now." Dr. Alara Hayes had exactly 3 seconds to decide. Walk away and let whatever was about to happen unfold, or step into a lie that could destroy everything she'd built. She didn't know this man, didn't know what he'd done or who wanted him dead. But when she saw the desperation in his eyes, and the guns barely concealed under those expensive suits, she reached for the ring. One choice, one night, one stranger who would rewrite her entire future. If you want to see how this story ends, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. Now, let's begin. The Grand Meridian Hotel bar smelled like leather, expensive whiskey, and the kind of quiet desperation that only came with money and power colliding in dark corners. Alara Hayes sat at the polished maw bed counter, her conference badge still clipped to her blazer, nursing a gin and tonic she didn't really want. 3 days of veterinary symposiums had left her brain foggy with technical jargon and her feet aching from professional heels. She rarely wore back home in her clinic. She'd come down here because her hotel room felt too silent, too small, and because after 12 hours of discussing canine cardiology and feline oncology, she needed to be around people who didn't know what a thoracotomy was. The bartender, a young guy with perfectly styled hair and a name tag that read Marcus, was polishing glasses with the mechanical precision of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. The bar itself was mostly empty. A couple in the corner booth who looked like they were celebrating something expensive. A businessman on his phone, arguing in hushed, angry tones about quarterly projections. And then there was the man who just sat down 2 stools away from her. Alara noticed him because it was impossible not to. He moved like someone used to being watched, used to rooms going quiet when he entered them. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was just slightly too long to be corporate, and a face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so carefully blank. His suit probably cost more than her car payment. Maybe 2. He ordered something clear and strong, drank half of it in one swallow, and stared at the mirrored wall behind the bar like he was searching for answers in his own reflection. Alara looked away. Not her business, not her problem. She'd learned a long time ago that men who looked like that, expensive, dangerous, wound too tight, were best observed from a distance. She was reaching for her phone to check her early morning flight when she felt it, that prickling awareness that comes right before something goes wrong. The bar doors opened, 3 men walked in, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 5 degrees. They weren't dressed like hotel guests. Too sharp, too coordinated. They moved like a unit, scanning the room with the methodical precision of people who'd done this before. The man 2 stools down from Alara went absolutely still. Marcus the bartender found something very interesting to do at the far end of the bar. The couple in the corner booth suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be. And Alara, because she was smart and had good instincts and had grown up in a neighborhood where you learned to read danger early, started to slide off her bar stool. Don't. The word was quiet, barely audible, but it stopped her cold. The man had shifted closer without her noticing, close enough that his voice wouldn't carry. His eyes were still on the mirror, tracking the 3 men's approach. But his hand, his left hand, was doing something strange. He was slipping a ring off his finger. "I need you to do something for me," he said, voice low and urgent and absolutely calm in a way that made her heart start hammering. "And I need you to do it without asking questions." "I don't—" "They're going to reach this bar in about 15 seconds, he continued, like she hadn't spoken. "When they do, I need you to be wearing this ring. I need you to lean into me like we've been together for years. And I need you to sell it like your life depends on it." He turned then, finally looked at her directly, and Alara felt something shift in her chest. His eyes were gray, storm cloud gray, and they were desperate and calculating and absolutely serious. "Because it might," he finished. The ring sat between them on the bar. Diamond. Massive. The kind of thing that came with insurance policies and security guards. "You're insane," Alara whispered. "Probably." His mouth quirked, not quite a smile. "But I'm also the only thing between you and them noticing you were sitting close enough to overhear whatever they're about to say. So unless you want to become a loose end that needs tying up, I'd suggest you pick up that ring and start acting like you love me." The three men were halfway across the bar now. Alara's hand moved before her brain caught up. The ring was heavy, cold, foreign on her finger. It fit perfectly, which seemed impossible and ominous, and "Lean in," the man murmured, and then his arm was around her waist, pulling her close, and she was pressed against his side like they'd done this 100 times before. "Adrian Voss," one of the men called out, voice carrying across the quiet bar. "Fancy seeing you here." The man beside her, Adrian apparently, didn't tense, didn't react, just turned with his arm still around Alara, expression shifting into something bland and mildly annoyed. "Constantine," he said, "I thought I made it clear I wasn't interested in doing business tonight." The three men had reached them now. The one who'd spoken, Constantine, tall and rail-thin with a face like a hatchet, smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Business doesn't stop just because you want a vacation, Adrian." His gaze slid to Alara, assessing and cold. "And who's this?" Adrian's hand tightened on her hip, a warning and a reassurance all at once. "My fiancée," he said smoothly. "Alara, meet Konstantin Volkov." "Konstantin, this is Dr. Alara Hayes. She's been very patient with me working through dinner, but I think she's about reached her limit." Alara's mind was racing. Fiancée. Doctor. He'd somehow known she was a doctor from her conference badge, had woven it into the lie so smoothly that Konstantin's eyes flickered with something that might have been belief. "Doctor," Konstantin repeated, his smile sharpening. "How lovely. Adrian, you didn't mention you were engaged." "I don't mention a lot of things to you, Konstantin." The temperature dropped another few degrees. One of the other men, shorter, stockier, with hands that looked like they'd broken bones before, shifted his weight. Alara caught the movement and recognized it. She'd seen it in the ER during her rotation years ago, the unconscious adjustment of someone carrying a weapon. Her mouth was dry. Her heart was trying to punch through her ribs. Adrian's thumb traced a small circle on her hip, grounding and deliberate. She'd spent 6 years in veterinary school learning to stay calm when animals were panicking, bleeding, dying. She'd talked down aggressive dogs, soothed fractured horses, performed surgery with owners watching through observation windows. She knew how to project calm when everything was chaos. So she smiled, reached up with her left hand, the one with the massive diamond, and touched Adrian's jaw, familiar and fond. "It's fine," she said, voice steady, "though I was hoping we'd at least make it through one drink before your work followed you here." Konstantin's eyes tracked the ring, the gesture, the easy intimacy of it. Adrian turned his head slightly, enough to brush a kiss against her knuckles. His lips were warm. The gesture was so smoothly done that for a second Alara almost believed it herself. 5 minutes, Adrian said, looking back at Konstantin. "Then I'm done for the night." Konstantin studied them for a long moment. Then he nodded, sharp and dismissive. 5 minutes. The terrace. Don't keep us waiting." He turned and walked toward the outdoor area, the other two men following like shadows. Adrian didn't move, didn't release her. They sat there, frozen in their performance, while Marcus the bartender materialized with a fresh drink and the studied blindness of someone who'd learned not to see things. 30 seconds passed. A minute. "They're watching through the glass," Adrian murmured, lips barely moving. "We need to sell this for another minute, maybe 2. "Who the hell are you?" Alara's voice shook despite her best efforts. "Someone who just dragged you into something very dangerous." He shifted, angling them so it looked like an intimate conversation, lowering his voice even further. "And someone who will get you out of it safely if you can keep this up for just a little longer." "Why should I trust you?" "Because you don't have a choice." His eyes met hers again, and there was something raw there, something honest underneath all the calculation. "And because I'm going to walk out onto that terrace in 2 minutes, and I need them to believe you're worth protecting, that I have something to lose. So please, Dr. Hayes." "Alara," she heard herself say. His expression shifted, surprised. "Alara," he repeated, testing the name. "Can you do this? Can you sit here, finish your drink, and then go up to your room like nothing happened?" Every instinct screamed at her to run, to grab her bag and get as far from Adrian Voss and Konstantin Volkov and whatever the hell this was as possible. But his hand was still on her hip, steady and warm, and those gray eyes were asking her to trust him even though he'd given her no reason to. And maybe it was the exhaustion from 3 days of conferences. Maybe it was the gin. Maybe it was the part of her that had spent her whole life being careful, being smart, being safe, and was suddenly, inexplicably tired of it. "Okay," she whispered. Something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe. Or regret. He leaned in, slow and deliberate, and pressed his lips to her temple. It wasn't passionate. It was gentle, almost reverent, the kind of kiss you gave someone you actually cared about. "Thank you," he breathed against her skin. Then he was pulling back, standing, adjusting his cuffs with practiced ease. "Order whatever you want," he said, voice returning to normal volume, playing to whatever audience might still be watching. "I'll be back before you finish it." He walked toward the terrace, shoulders straight, head high, like a man walking toward his execution. Alara sat at the bar, a stranger's ring on her finger, and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. Marcus reappeared with a menu and a carefully neutral expression. "Another gin and tonic?" he asked. "Something stronger," Alara said. "Whatever he was drinking." Marcus poured 3 fingers of vodka into a crystal glass. Top shelf. The kind of liquor that cost more per ounce than her coffee budget for a month. "On Mr. Voss's tab," Marcus said quietly. Then, even quieter, "You should probably go to your room soon, before they come back in." So Marcus knew exactly who Adrian was. What he was. Alara's hand trembled as she lifted the glass. Through the terrace doors, she could see shadows moving. Adrian, standing with his back to the glass. Constantine, gesturing sharply. The conversation looked heated, contained, dangerous. She should leave. Should slip the ring off her finger, leave it on the bar, and disappear into the elevator before any of them noticed. Instead, she pulled out her phone and did what any rational person would do when handed a stranger's name in a terrifying situation. She searched for him. Adrian Voss. The results loaded slowly, and what she found made her blood run cold. Articles, dozens of them. Business journals, financial news, a few gossip columns, photos of Adrian in tailored suits at charity galas, gallery openings, corporate events, always alone, always watching the room like he was calculating trajectories. Voss Industries, import/export, private equity, real estate development. Nothing explicitly illegal, nothing that would make the news in a bad way. But the comment sections, the whispered implications, the way certain articles danced around certain details, organized crime, money laundering, connections to Eastern European networks. And underneath it all, son of Marcus Voss, deceased, inherited the empire at 26, rumored to be cleaning house, going legitimate, or maybe just better at hiding the bodies. Alara's vodka burned going down. The terrace door opened. Adrian walked back in, face carefully expressionless. Constantine and his men stayed outside, lit cigarettes glowing in the darkness. Adrian came straight to her, slid back onto his stool, and picked up his abandoned drink. "They're gone," he said quietly. "You're safe." "Am I?" Alara kept her voice low, matching his. "Because I just read some very interesting things about you, Adrian Voss." He went still. Then, slowly, he turned to look at her. "You should have left." "Probably." She met his gaze steadily. "But I'm still here. So why don't you tell me what the hell I just stepped into?" For a long moment, he didn't speak, just studied her like he was trying to figure out a puzzle, reassessing every assumption. Then he signaled Marcus for another round and started talking. "My father built an empire," Adrian said. "Import, export, shipping, real estate. All of it legitimate on paper, most of it dirty underneath. When he died 3 years ago, I inherited everything. The business, the buildings, the bank accounts." He paused. "And the obligations. To men like Constantine. To men worse than Constantine." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I've been trying to get out, clean it up, transition to legitimate operations, cut ties with the networks my father spent 40 years building. It's not going well. They don't want to let you go. They don't believe I'm serious. They think I'm playing both sides, keeping one foot in while pretending to go clean." He turned the glass in his hands, watching the liquid catch the light. "Tonight was supposed to be a test. Constantine offered me a deal. A big one. Very illegal. Very profitable. I turned him down. They didn't take it well." "So you dragged a random stranger into it?" "Not random." His eyes found hers again. You were close enough to overhear if they got aggressive, smart enough to realize you were in danger, and you had that look. What look? Like you'd rather face something head on than run from it. His mouth quirked. I gambled that you'd help me. And you did. Alara should have been angry, should have thrown the ring at him and walked away. Instead, she heard herself ask, why the ring? Why fiancée instead of girlfriend or business partner? Or because Constantine's world runs on very specific rules, Adrian interrupted. Family is sacred. Wives, fiancés, they're protected, off limits. If I'd introduced you as anything less, you'd have been leverage, a pressure point. This way, he gestured at the ring. This way, you're untouchable. Until they figure out it's fake, they won't. He said it with absolute certainty. Because you're not going to see them again. You're going to finish your drink, go to your room, check out tomorrow, and forget this ever happened. It was a dismissal. Clean, final, safe. Alara looked down at the ring on her finger, at the weight of it, the light catching in the facets. What happens to you? She asked. Adrian blinked, surprised. What? If I walk away, if this was a one-time performance, what happens to you? Constantine doesn't seem like the type to just let things go. He's not. Adrian's voice was flat. But that's not your problem. You made it my problem when you put this ring on my finger. They stared at each other across the small space between bar stools. Adrian broke first, looking away, scrubbing a hand across his jaw. I have security, he said finally. Lawyers, resources. I'll figure it out. Or you'll end up dead. Possibly. He said it like he was discussing the weather. But still not your problem, Dr. Hayes. Alara should have agreed, should have slipped off the ring, wished him luck, and disappeared. Instead, she thought about the desperation in his eyes when he'd first asked for help. The careful way he'd protected her, even as he'd used her. The exhaustion in his voice when he'd talked about his father's empire. She thought about her own life. Safe, structured, predictable. A successful practice, a nice apartment, a carefully curated existence that never surprised her. And she thought about how that life had started to feel less like security and more like a cage she'd built herself. I have a proposal, she heard herself say. Adrian turned back to her, wary. What kind of proposal? You need someone to play your fiancé convincingly, to make Constantine and whoever else believe you've changed, that you have something worth protecting, something that makes you vulnerable. Alara spoke slowly, working through the idea as she said it. And I'm guessing one performance in a hotel bar isn't going to be enough. Alara, let me finish. She cut him off, surprised by her own boldness. I go back home in 2 days, back to my clinic, my life, my routine, and honestly, right now that sounds incredibly boring. So here's what I'm thinking. You need a fake fiancé. I need... She paused, trying to articulate something she barely understood herself. I need something different. Something that's not safe. Adrian was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. You want to pretend to be engaged to me, he said slowly, knowing what I am, what I'm involved in. I want to help you get out of it, Alara corrected. And yes, I know that sounds insane. I'm a veterinarian from Michigan. I specialize in small animals and exotic pets. My most exciting Friday night usually involves Netflix and my cat, but... She met his eyes. But you looked at me tonight like I was the only thing standing between you and disaster. And I can't remember the last time anyone looked at me like I mattered that much, even if it was just for show. The honesty of it sat between them, raw and uncomfortable. Adrian's expression did something complicated, softened and hardened simultaneously. This isn't a game, he said quietly. These people, the ones I'm trying to get away from, they don't make empty threats. If they find out you're lying, if they decide you're a liability instead of protection, then you'll protect me. Alara surprised herself with how certain she sounded. Like you did tonight. You don't know me. No, she agreed. But I'm a pretty good judge of character. Comes with the job. And you, she gestured at him. You're dangerous, probably criminal, definitely in over your head. But you're also trying to get out, to be better. And I think that counts for something. Adrian was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out a business card, and slid it across the bar to her. My lawyer's contact information, he said. If you're serious, And I mean really serious, not just drunk and having an existential crisis. Call this number tomorrow. We'll draw up a contract, terms, compensation, security arrangements, exit clauses, everything legal and documented. You'd pay me to pretend to be your fiancée. I'd pay you to potentially save your life when my world inevitably tries to destroy you. Yes. His voice was harsh, but his eyes were almost pleading. This isn't romance, Alara. It's not an adventure. It's a business arrangement with very real risks. And if you're smart, you'll go upstairs right now and forget we ever had this conversation. Alara picked up the card. Expensive stock, embossed lettering. Catherine Chen, attorney at law. I'll call tomorrow, she said. Alara, I'm not drunk. She stood, leaving cash on the bar for her drinks, Adrian's ring still on her finger. And I'm not having an existential crisis. I'm making a choice, maybe a stupid one, but mine. She started toward the elevator. Dr. Hayes, Adrian called after her. She turned back. He was still sitting at the bar, backlit by the dim lighting, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Thank you, he said, for tonight. Ask me again in a month if you're still grateful. The elevator doors closed on his surprised laugh. Alara's hotel room was on the 14th floor, overlooking the city. She stood at the window, still wearing her conference blazer and Adrian's ring, watching traffic move in patterns far below. Her phone buzzed. A text from her practice manager. Hope the conference is going well. Mrs. Henderson's cat is doing great after his dental. See you Monday. Monday, 48 hours away. 48 hours to decide if she was really going to do this. Really going to call that number, meet with a lawyer, and agree to fake marry a man she'd met 3 hours ago who was neck-deep in organized crime. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt more alive than she had in years. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This is Adrian, in case you need to reach me before tomorrow. And Alara, sleep on it. Make sure this is what you want. Because once we start, there's no going back. She typed out a response, deleted it, typed again. I'm sure. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then I'll see you soon. And Alara? Keep the ring tonight, just in case Constantine has anyone watching the hotel. She looked down at the diamond on her finger, at the way it caught the city lights, throwing fractured rainbows across her skin. Just in case. She didn't take it off. The next morning, Alara woke to sunlight streaming through hotel curtains and the disorienting feeling that last night had been a fever dream. Then she saw the ring on her nightstand, glinting in the light, and reality crashed back. She'd agreed to fake marry a criminal, or ex-criminal, or trying to be ex-criminal. The distinction seemed important, but also terrifyingly unclear. Her phone showed 2 missed calls from her mother, a handful of conference reminder emails, and 1 new message from the unknown number that was apparently Adrian Voss. Catherine can meet at 10 a.m. if you're available. Address attached. No pressure. But if you're coming, come ready to negotiate. Alara checked the time. 8:47 a.m. She had 73 minutes to decide if she was really doing this. She spent 20 minutes in the shower trying to think rationally, trying to list all the reasons this was insane, dangerous, stupid. The list was long and compelling. Then she thought about Adrian's eyes last night, about the careful way he'd protected her even as he'd used her, about the exhaustion in his voice when he'd talked about his father's empire, about her own life, stretching out ahead of her in a perfectly predictable line. She was out of the shower and dressed in 35 minutes. Conservative but professional. Tailored pants, a silk blouse, her good blazer. She looked like someone going to a business meeting, someone who made smart decisions. The irony wasn't lost on her. Catherine Chen's office was in a sleek high-rise downtown, all glass and steel and the kind of understated money that didn't need to announce itself. The reception area had abstract art on the walls and furniture that probably cost more than Alara's first car. Adrian was already there. He stood when she entered, and for a second they just looked at each other. He was in a different suit, charcoal gray, perfectly fitted, but the same watchful intensity, like he was still half expecting her to bolt. "You came," he said. "I said I would." People say a lot of things. His mouth quirked, especially after strange nights in hotel bars. I'm not most people. I'm starting to realize that. A door opened and a woman emerged. 50s, sharp-eyed, with silver-streaked hair and a handshake that could crack walnuts. "Dr. Hayes," she said, "I'm Catherine Chen, shall we?" The conference room was all windows and polished wood. Catherine sat at the head of the table, a stack of documents in front of her. Adrian took one side, Alara took the other. It felt like a negotiation, which she supposed it was. "Adrian has briefed me on the situation," Catherine began, flipping open a folder. "And I've prepared a preliminary agreement outlining the terms of your arrangement. Before we proceed, I need to make absolutely certain you understand what you're agreeing to." "I understand Adrian needs someone to pretend to be his fiancée," Alara said, "to convince certain people that he's changed, that he has something to lose. That's the surface version." Catherine's gaze was uncomfortably direct. "The reality is that you'll be entering a world where violence is commonplace, where your association with Adrian makes you both a target and a shield, and where one wrong move could have permanent consequences. Adrian's enemies won't hesitate to use you as leverage if they discover the engagement is fake." "Which is why it can't be fake," Adrian said quietly. "Not in any way they can prove." Catherine nodded. "Which brings us to the terms. Adrian is proposing a 12-month arrangement with the option to extend or terminate based on mutual agreement and circumstances. During that time, you'll maintain the appearance of an engaged couple. Public appearances, social media presence, shared residence when necessary." "Shared residence?" Alara's stomach flipped. "I have a penthouse in the city," Adrian said, "and a house upstate. You'd need to be seen coming and going, staying over. It has to look real." "We'd establish separate bedrooms," Catherine added. "Separate spaces. The contract includes very clear boundaries regarding personal privacy and physical contact." Alara's cheeks heated. She hadn't even thought about, "In terms of compensation," Catherine continued smoothly, "Adrian is offering a base payment of $50,000 per month with bonuses for particularly high-risk appearances or situations. All living expenses covered, full security detail, health insurance, legal representation if needed." Alara's brain stuttered. 50,000 per month. That was more than she made in half a year at her clinic. "That's too much," she heard herself say. Adrian leaned forward. "It's not nearly enough for what I'm asking you to risk." "I also don't want you to feel trapped," Catherine said. "So the contract includes multiple exit clauses. If at any point you feel unsafe, if the situation becomes untenable, if Adrian violates any of the agreed-upon boundaries, you can walk away. Immediately. With full compensation for the time served and a substantial severance package." Alara looked at Adrian. "You'd really let me go? Just like that?" "Your safety isn't negotiable," he said. "Neither is your choice." Catherine slid a document across the table. "I'll give you both some privacy to discuss. Take your time. This is a significant decision." She left, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Alone with Adrian, the room felt smaller, more intimate. "You don't have to do this," he said. "Last night in the bar, I was desperate, scared. I shouldn't have dragged you into it." "But you did." "But I did," he agreed. "And if you want to walk away now, I'll understand. No hard feelings, no consequences." Alara looked down at the contract, at the pages of legal language that would bind her to this man, this life, this risk. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "Why are you really doing this? Not the surface reason, the real one. Why not just disappear? Take your money, change your identity, start over somewhere else?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm tired of running," he said finally. "From my father's legacy, from the expectations, from the person everyone assumes I am. I want to prove that I can be different, that I can take something rotten and make it clean." He met her eyes, "Even if it kills me trying." "That's what I thought," Alara said softly. She picked up the pen Catherine had left. "What are you doing?" Adrian asked. Making a choice." She flipped to the signature page. "You said last night that this isn't a game, that it's dangerous and real and could destroy me. You're right. But you know what? I've spent my whole life being careful, being safe, and I'm tired of it too." She signed her name in clear, decisive strokes. Adrian stared at the signature like it was a miracle and a curse. "You're sure?" he said. It wasn't a question. "No," Alara admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway." He reached across the table and signed his own name below hers. Just like that, it was done. Catherine returned a few minutes later, witnessed their signatures, and filed the contract in a secure folder. "Congratulations," she said dryly. "You're officially fake engaged. Try not to get killed." They left the building together, stepping out into bright sunlight and the noise of the city. "So," Alara said, "what happens now?" Adrian pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then showed her the screen. It was a calendar. Events, dates, obligations, all color-coded and meticulously planned. "We start building the narrative," he said. "Dinner tonight at Aurelio's. Very public, very visible, lots of social media presence. Tomorrow, brunch with some of my business associates. Next week, a charity gala where we'll make our formal debut as a couple." Alara's head spun. "That's a lot of public appearances." "It has to be overwhelming," Adrian said. "Has to look like I'm showing you off. Like I can't wait for the world to meet you. Anything less and they'll suspect. They being Constantine and his friends. And everyone else in my father's old network, the associates I'm trying to distance myself from, the rivals who think I'm weak, the federal investigators who've been building a case for 3 years. He pocketed his phone. "We have to convince all of them. No pressure." His mouth quirked. "Welcome to my life." They walked a few more blocks in silence. Alara was hyper-aware of him beside her, the way people seemed to give them space on the sidewalk, the subtle tension in his shoulders, the watchfulness that never quite left his eyes. "Adrian," she said finally, "I need you to be honest with me. What's the worst-case scenario here? What's the thing you're most afraid of?" He stopped walking, looked at her for a long moment. "That they'll figure out you're not really in love with me," he said quietly, "and that they'll hurt you to prove a point, to show me what happens when I try to leave." The honesty of it stole her breath. "Then we'd better make sure they believe it," she managed. "Alara, I mean it." She stepped closer, closing the distance between them on the busy sidewalk. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right. No half measures, no hesitation. They need to believe that I'm the most important thing in your world." "That's asking a lot." "You're paying me $50,000 a month. I think I can manage some convincing acting." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely about the money anymore. Adrian seemed to know it too. His eyes searched hers, looking for something. "Okay," he said finally. "Then let's start now." He took her hand, not the one with the ring, but her right hand, and laced their fingers together. It should have felt awkward, performative. Instead, it felt exactly right. They walked through the city like that, hand in hand, looking for all the world like two people who'd chosen each other. And somewhere in the back of Alara's mind, a small voice whispered that maybe, eventually, the performance wouldn't be entirely fake. That thought should have terrified her. Instead, it made her hold on tighter. Aurelio's was the kind of restaurant where reservations were made 3 months in advance, and the waitstaff remembered your drink order from your last visit 2 years ago. Alara had never been anywhere remotely like it. The entrance alone, all dark wood and brass fixtures and a doorman who looked like he could bench press a sedan, made her clinic's waiting room seem like a different planet. Adrian's hand was warm against the small of her back as they walked in, and she tried not to think about how natural that felt. How many times had they touched in the past 8 hours? His hand in hers on the walk back from Catherine's office, his arm around her shoulders when they'd stopped for coffee, his fingers brushing her wrist when he'd helped her into the car that had picked them up at her hotel. All performance, all necessary, all starting to feel less like acting than she wanted to admit. "Mr. Voss, the maitre d' greeted them with a smile that was probably genuine. "Your usual table is ready." They were led through the dining room, past tables where people were eating meals that cost more than Alara's monthly utilities. She caught glimpses of their reflections in the mirrors lining the walls. Adrian in another perfectly tailored suit, her in the black dress she'd panic bought at a boutique 2 hours ago, because nothing in her suitcase seemed remotely appropriate for this world. The dress had cost more than her rent. Adrian had handed over his credit card without blinking. Their table was in the back corner, positioned so Adrian could see the entire room. He pulled out her chair himself, a gesture so smooth and automatic that she wondered how many women he'd done this for before. Then she remembered. This was supposed to be different, special. The woman he was serious enough about to put a ring on. "You're thinking too hard," Adrian murmured as he sat across from her. "I can see it on your face." "I'm trying to figure out how to act like I belong here." "You do belong here. You're with me." He said it matter-of-factly, like it was the simplest thing in the world. And besides, half these people are criminals with better tailors. The other half are just boring rich people. You're more interesting than all of them combined. You don't know that. You've known me for less than 24 hours. I know you signed a contract this morning that could get you killed. His eyes held hers across the table. That makes you either the bravest person I've ever met or the most reckless. Either way, definitely interesting. A waiter appeared with champagne before Alara could respond. Dom Perignon, she noticed from the label. Adrian accepted it with a nod, waited for the glasses to be poured. To new partnerships, he said, raising his glass. Alara lifted hers. To not getting killed. His laugh was surprised and genuine. A few heads turned at nearby tables. Good, she thought. Let them look. Let them see Adrian Voss laughing with a woman, relaxed and almost happy. That was the whole point. The champagne was better than anything she'd ever tasted, which seemed unfair. She was going to get very spoiled very quickly at this rate. So, she said, setting down her glass, are we being watched right now? Absolutely. Adrian didn't even glance around. There's a man 3 tables to your left who works for the Kozlov family. The woman at the bar is a federal agent. I've seen her following me for 6 months. And the couple by the window are food bloggers with 200,000 Instagram followers, which might be more dangerous than both of those combined. Alara resisted the urge to look. How do you live like this? Very carefully. He paused while the waiter took their orders. Adrian ordering for both of them in fluent Italian that made something warm unfurl in her chest. But tonight isn't about me. It's about you. About us. About selling the story. What is the story? That I met you 6 months ago at a veterinary conference in Boston. He spoke quietly, but she could hear how carefully he'd planned this. You were giving a presentation on exotic animal care. I was there because I'd just acquired a shipping company that deals in legal animal transport, and I wanted to understand the regulations better. That's actually plausible. Catherine's very good at building believable covers. Adrian's mouth quirked. We talked after your presentation. I asked you to dinner. You said no because you could tell I was trouble. Smart, fictional me. Very smart. But I'm persistent. I kept showing up at conferences, sending flowers to your clinic, making excuses to need veterinary consultations for animals I definitely don't own. Despite herself, Alara smiled. Let me guess. I eventually gave in. 3 months of pursuit. You made me work for it. There was something in his voice, something almost wistful. And when you finally said yes, I knew I was done for. That you were different. That I'd spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. The words hung between them, pretty and practiced and entirely fictional. Except Adrian was looking at her like they weren't. That's a good story, Alara managed. It needs to be. Because everyone in my life is going to question it, poke holes in it, try to figure out what you're really after. What am I really after? In the story, I mean. Nothing. His voice was firm. That's what makes it believable. You're not interested in my money or my connections or my world. You're a successful veterinarian with your own life, your own career. You said yes because you saw something in me worth saving, despite every red flag telling you to run. Alara's throat felt tight. And did I? See something worth saving? Adrian didn't answer immediately. Their food arrived. Something elaborate and beautiful that Alara couldn't have named if her life depended on it. I hope so, he said finally, because I'm betting everything on it. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The food was incredible, each bite a small revelation. Alara tried to focus on that instead of the weight of Adrian's words. The eyes she could feel on them from around the room, the growing awareness that this was real in ways she hadn't fully processed yet. Tell me something true, she said suddenly. Adrian looked up. What? We're supposed to know each other, to have been together for 6 months, but I don't actually know anything about you beyond what I read in those articles last night. She set down her fork. So tell me something true, something real, not the performance. He studied her for a long moment, and she watched him decide whether to deflect or trust her. I hate champagne, he said finally. Alara blinked. What? Everyone expects me to love it. It's what my father drank, what you're supposed to order at places like this. But it tastes like expensive regret to me. He lifted his glass, examined it. I'd rather have beer. Something cheap and simple and honest. It was such a small thing, such a human confession, and it made everything feel suddenly, terrifyingly real. I'm afraid of birds, Ilara offered back. His eyebrows rose. You're a veterinarian. I know, it's ridiculous. I can perform surgery on a rabbit, handle aggressive dogs, calm down a panicked horse. But birds? She shuddered. Something about the way they move. Too fast, too unpredictable. I had a parrot patient last year who bit me and I nearly passed out. Adrian's laugh was quiet but genuine. That's actually perfect. How is that perfect? Because it's the kind of detail you can't fake. The kind of thing that makes you real. He leaned forward slightly. This is going to work, Ilara. People are going to believe us because we're not trying to be perfect. We're just trying to be complicated and human. And Adrian Voss, the voice cut through the restaurant's ambient noise like a blade. Ilara looked up to see a woman approaching their table. Tall, blonde, stunning in a way that made Ilara immediately aware of every imperfection in her own appearance. Designer dress, perfect makeup, the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Adrian's entire body language changed. Not tense, exactly, but carefully neutral. Vivienne, he said, this is unexpected. Is it? Vivienne's smile was sharp. You know I have a standing reservation here every Thursday. Her eyes slid to Ilara, assessing and dismissive in one glance. And who's this? My fiancée. Adrian's hand found Ilara's across the table, his grip just slightly too tight. Dr. Ilara Hayes, this is Vivienne Moreau. We've known each other for years. How lovely. Vivienne's tone suggested it was anything but. I wasn't aware you were seeing anyone, Adrian. You've been so secretive lately. Not secretive. Private. His thumb traced a circle on Ilara's palm. Warning or reassurance, she couldn't tell. Some things are worth protecting. Vivienne's laugh was ice wrapped in silk. Of course. Well, congratulations. I'm sure you'll be very happy together. She turned her attention back to Ilara. What do you do, Dr. Hayes, besides landing one of the most eligible bachelors in the city? The implication was clear. You're not good enough for him. Emarosor, and we both know it. Ilara felt Adrian tense, ready to intervene, but something stubborn flared in her chest. She'd dealt with difficult clients, aggressive pet owners, and condescending colleagues. She could handle one jealous ex. I'm a veterinarian, she said evenly. I specialize in exotic animal medicine and emergency surgery. And I landed Adrian by being completely unimpressed with his money and his status and everything else that apparently matters to people in his world. Vivienne's smile froze. Adrian's hand tightened on hers, but now it felt like support rather than restraint. How refreshing, Vivienne said, her voice dripping venom. I'm sure that novelty will wear off eventually. Adrian, when you're done playing house with your little pet doctor, give me a call. We have unfinished business to discuss. She walked away, every movement calculated to draw eyes. Ilara realized she was shaking slightly. I'm sorry, Adrian said immediately. I should have warned you. Vivienne and I, it's complicated. Ex-girlfriend? Ex-something. We were never really together, but our families had expectations. My father wanted me to marry her, merge our businesses. He was still holding her hand. I refused. She didn't take it well. I can see that. Ilara took a breath. Is she dangerous? Socially, yes. She has influence, connections, the ability to make life difficult. He met her eyes. But not physically. Not like Constantine and the others. That's something, at least. They finished their meal in relative peace after that, though Ilara could feel Vivienne's eyes on them from across the room. When the check came, Adrian paid without looking at it, then stood and offered Ilara his hand. Ready? He asked. For what? The real performance. He nodded toward the restaurant entrance, where a small crowd of photographers had materialized. Someone tipped off the press. We're about to become very public. Ilara's stomach dropped. Already? Vivienne's specialty. She can mobilize a media circus in under an hour. He drew her closer, his arm around her waist. Just stay close to me, smile, and let me handle the questions. Can you do that? Do I have a choice? Always. We can leave through the kitchen if you want, but if we do, it looks like we're hiding, like there's something to be ashamed of. He was right. Ilara knew he was right. Okay, she said. Let's do this. They walked out together, and the cameras erupted. Flashes everywhere, voices shouting questions, Adrian's name repeated like a chant. He kept her close, his hand firm on her waist, guiding her through the chaos with practiced ease. Adrian, who's your date? Is it true you're engaged? Dr. Hayes, how long have you been together? Adrian, what about Vivian Moreau? Adrian stopped, turned to face the cameras with Alara tucked against his side. This is Dr. Alara Hayes, he said, voice carrying over the noise. We've been together for 6 months, and yes, we're engaged. That's all we're saying tonight. Thank you. More questions, more flashes, but Adrian was already moving, steering Alara toward the car that had appeared at the curb. His driver, a serious-looking man built like a linebacker, held the door open. They slid into the back seat, and the chaos cut off as the door closed. Silence. Alara was breathing hard, her heart pounding. That was insane, she managed. That was nothing. Adrian was scrolling through his phone, watching something. It's already online, 3 gossip sites and counting. He showed her the screen. Photos of them leaving the restaurant, her looking slightly shell-shocked, him looking protective and possessive. The headlines were predictable. Adrian Voss off the market, and mystery woman catches eligible bachelor, and Voss dynasty heir engaged to unknown veterinarian. Unknown veterinarian, Alara read. That's flattering. Give them 12 hours. They'll have your entire life story by morning. Adrian pocketed his phone. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you signed up for. Actually, it's exactly what I signed up for. She looked at him in the dim light of the car's interior. You said it would be overwhelming and public and invasive. You weren't lying. No, I wasn't. They rode in silence for a few blocks. Alara watched the city pass by outside the tinted windows, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Where are we going? She asked finally. My penthouse. You need to be seen coming and going, remember? And we should probably coordinate our stories before the media circus gets worse. He paused. Separate bedrooms. Separate spaces. Nothing you're not comfortable with. Adrian, I mean it, Alara. This only works if you feel safe. If you trust me. She looked at him, really looked at him, at the careful way he held himself, the tension in his shoulders, the vulnerability hiding behind all that control. I do trust you, she said quietly. I don't know why, but I do. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or fear that she'd just made a terrible mistake. Then let's hope your instincts are better than mine, he said. The penthouse was on the 42nd floor of a building that had its own security team and an elevator that required a key card to access. Adrian's hand was on her lower back again as they rode up in silence, and Alara tried not to think about what it meant that she was going to his home, his private space, the place where he lived when he wasn't performing for the world. The elevator opened directly into the apartment. Alara stepped out and immediately understood why Adrian had been so careful to specify separate bedrooms. The place was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her car, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in a museum. It's too much, Adrian said, watching her reaction. I know. My father had a decorator do it. I keep meaning to change it, make it feel less like a hotel, but you're never really here, Alara finished. Yeah. She walked to the windows, looked out at the lights spreading in every direction. From up here, the city looked clean and organized and almost peaceful. It's beautiful, she said. It's lonely. The honesty in his voice made her turn. This whole place, it's a monument to everything my father built. Everything I'm trying to escape. Some days I can't stand to be here. Then why keep it? Because selling it would be a statement. An admission that I'm really leaving his world behind. And I'm not ready for that fight yet. He moved to stand beside her at the window. Soon, but not yet. They stood there in silence, looking out at the city. Your room is down that hall, Adrian said finally, pointing. Second door on the left. I had someone bring your things from the hotel earlier. If you need anything... Adrian? She interrupted him gently. We're okay. This is okay. Stop apologizing. He looked at her, and for a moment, the careful control slipped. She saw the exhaustion underneath, the weight of everything he was carrying. I'll try, he said. Alara's room was bigger than her entire apartment back home. King bed, private bathroom, a closet that could fit her entire wardrobe 3 times over. Her suitcase was sitting on a bench at the foot of the bed, looking small and out of place. She unpacked mechanically, hanging up the few nice things she'd brought, thinking about tomorrow and the day after, and all the days stretching out ahead of her in this strange new life. Her phone buzzed. A text from her practice manager. OMG, just saw the news. You're engaged? Why didn't you tell me? Call me immediately. Then her mother. Alara Marie Hayes, I just saw photos of you with some man on the internet. Who is he? Why don't I know about this? Call me. Then her best friend from vet school. What the actual hell? You've been holding out on me? He's gorgeous. When did this happen? Alara stared at the messages, feeling the walls of her old life crumbling in real time. She should call them, should explain, She didn't know what she should do. Instead, she texted her practice manager. It's new and complicated. I'll explain when I get back. Sorry for the shock. Her mother. I'm fine, Mom. I'll call you this weekend, promise. Her friend. Long story. We'll tell you everything soon. Just trust me for now? Then she turned off her phone and sat on the edge of the too big bed in the too expensive room and tried to figure out what the hell she was doing. A soft knock on the door interrupted her spiral. Come in, she called. Adrian opened the door partway, not entering. I forgot to mention, my security team will be doing a sweep of your apartment back in Michigan tomorrow, making sure there are no vulnerabilities, installing some upgrades, just in case. In case of what? In case someone decides to use your real life as leverage. His expression was apologetic. I know it's invasive, but it's necessary. Alara thought about her small one-bedroom apartment above the corner store, her nosy landlord, her neighbor who borrowed sugar and complained about the noise. The idea of security teams sweeping it felt surreal. Okay, she said. Also, Catherine wants to meet tomorrow to prep you. Background on my business associates, who's safe, who's dangerous, what to say, and what not to say. He paused. It's a lot. If you need more time, I'm fine, Adrian. You keep saying that, because I am. She stood, walked over to him. I'm scared and overwhelmed and completely out of my depth. But I'm also fine. Both things can be true. He looked down at her, and she was struck again by how tired he seemed beneath all the polish. Get some rest, he said quietly. Tomorrow's going to be even worse than today. Looking forward to it. His mouth quirked. Liar. But there was warmth in it, something almost affectionate. He left, closing the door softly behind him, and Alara was alone with her thoughts and her fears and the growing certainty that she'd just stepped off a cliff with no idea where she'd land. She dreamed that night of cameras and diamonds and gray eyes, watching her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through unfamiliar windows and her phone was exploding with notifications. The media had done exactly what Adrian predicted. By morning, they had her entire life story. Her veterinary degree from Michigan State, her small animal practice in Ann Arbor, her quiet life that was decidedly not quiet anymore. The headlines had evolved, from small-town vet to Voss dynasty fiancée, and Adrian Voss's mystery woman, who is Dr. Alara Hayes, and love story or business deal, inside the Voss engagement. That last one made her stomach turn. She found Adrian in the kitchen, looking annoyingly put together in jeans and a white button-down, drinking coffee and scrolling through a tablet. Good morning, he said, looking up. Coffee? Please. He poured her a cup from an espresso machine that probably cost more than her student loans. The coffee was perfect, which was starting to seem like a theme. So, Alara said, sitting across from him at the kitchen island. We're famous. You're famous. I was already infamous. He slid the tablet toward her. But yes, the story's everywhere. Most of it is harmless speculation. A few are trying to dig deeper. How deep? They found your college transcripts, your clinic's Yelp reviews, and an interview you did 3 years ago about exotic bird medicine. Alara choked on her coffee. The bird thing, of course. They also found photos from your social media. You at a friend's wedding, you with your cat, you volunteering at an animal shelter. His voice was careful. You should probably make your accounts private, unless you want every photo you've ever posted analyzed by strangers. The reality of it hit her in waves. This wasn't just playing dress-up at fancy restaurants. This was her entire life being dissected for public consumption. Hey! Adrian's hand covered hers on the counter. We can end this right now. You can walk away, and I'll make sure the media understands it was mutual. No scandal, no blame. No. Ilara said, I said no. She pulled her hand back, needing the space to think. I'm not backing out because some reporters found my college transcripts. If I leave, it's going to be for a real reason. Not because this got uncomfortable. He studied her. You're stubborn. You're just figuring that out? I'm starting to realize I severely underestimated you. Good. Keep doing that. Catherine arrived an hour later with a briefcase full of files and the energy of a general preparing for war. They spent the next 3 hours in Adrian's study, a room lined with books he probably never read, and artwork that made Ilara's eyes hurt, going over names, faces, relationships, and loyalties. Konstantin Volkov, Catherine said, showing Ilara a photo. You met him already. Eastern European network, primarily weapons and contraband. He and Adrian's father had a partnership that Adrian is trying to dissolve. He seemed like he wanted to kill Adrian. He probably does, but he also needs Adrian's shipping channels and distribution networks. So he's stuck in this uncomfortable middle ground of wanting him dead but needing him alive. Catherine pulled out another photo. Vivienne Moreau. You met her too. Old money, legitimate businesses on the surface, but her family's been laundering money for Russian oligarchs for 3 generations. And she wanted to marry Adrian. Still wants to marry Adrian, or at least merge their empires. Catherine's expression was dry. Your existence is extremely inconvenient for her. They went through a dozen more names. Business associates who were clean, business associates who were dirty, federal agents who were building cases, rivals who were waiting for Adrian to make a mistake. Ilara's head was spinning by the time Catherine finally closed her briefcase. One more thing, Catherine said. The charity gala next week, it's not just a social event. It's where Adrian is going to make his formal break with his father's old network. Announce new business directions, new partnerships. It's a statement. And I'm part of that statement. You're the centerpiece of it, the proof that he's changed, that he's building a different life. Catherine looked at her seriously. There will be people there who want to see you fail, who want to prove you're not good enough, not strong enough, not real enough. Can you handle that? Ilara thought about Vivian's ice-sharp smile, Konstantin's cold assessment, the cameras and the questions, and the constant weight of being watched. I'm a veterinarian, she said. I've had Great Danes bite me, cats scratch my eyes, and a macaw try to take off my finger. I think I can handle some rich people being mean. Catherine's laugh was surprised and genuine. I like you, Dr. Hayes. Don't get killed. Everyone keeps saying that, because it's a real possibility. After Catherine left, Adrian found Ilara standing at those massive windows again, looking out at the city. You okay? He asked. Define okay. He moved to stand beside her. Fair point. They stood in silence for a moment. Can I ask you something? Ilara said. Always. Do you ever regret it? Trying to get out, trying to go legitimate? Wouldn't it be easier to just accept what your father built and stop fighting? Adrian was quiet for a long time. Every day, he said finally, it would be so much easier to just give in, to be the person everyone expects me to be. But then I think about my father at the end, paranoid, isolated, surrounded by people who smiled to his face and planned his death behind his back. He died alone in a hospital room, and no one came to the funeral except the people who wanted to make sure he was really dead. I'm sorry, don't be. He built that ending himself brick by brick, bad decision by bad decision. Adrian's voice was flat. And I refuse to build the same thing, even if trying to break the cycle kills me. Ilara looked at him, at the tension in his jaw, the weight in his eyes, the determination wrapped in exhaustion. It won't kill you, she said quietly, because you're not doing it alone anymore. He turned to her, surprised. We're in this together, remember? She managed to smile. That's what fake fiancés are for, moral support and public credibility. Is that all we are? The question was soft, almost tentative. Fake? Ilara's breath caught. Before she could answer, before she could figure out what the answer even was, Adrian's phone rang. He checked it, and his expression went carefully blank. I have to take this. he said. He walked away, phone to his ear, voice dropping to a murmur she couldn't hear. Elara stood at the window, watching the city, and wondered when exactly the line between performance and reality had started to blur, and whether that was the most dangerous thing of all. Adrian was gone for 20 minutes. When he came back, his face was carved from stone, and his jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. "We have a problem," he said. Elara's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where Constantine just invited himself to dinner tomorrow night. Here, at the penthouse." Adrian ran a hand through his hair, disturbing the careful styling. "He wants to meet you properly. Get to know my fiancée." "That doesn't sound like a problem. That sounds like a nightmare." "It's both." He started pacing, the careful control she'd gotten used to fraying at the edges. "He's testing us, seeing if the engagement holds up under scrutiny. If he senses anything off, anything fake, then what? He kills us both over dinner?" "No, he'd be more subtle than that." Adrian stopped pacing, looked at her directly. "He'd start asking questions, digging into your background, your family, your life. And when he found something he could use, and he would find something, Elara, these people always do, he'd use it to pull us apart, to prove I'm lying, to show everyone that I'm not really changing, just playing games." Elara sat down on the leather couch, trying to process this. "So we need to be perfect tomorrow night, completely convincing. We need to be more than convincing. We need to be real." He sat beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. Constantine grew up in this world. He can spot a performance from a mile away. The only way this works is if we actually know each other, if the details are right. We've been pretending to date for 6 months. We should know each other. Exactly. So we need to actually learn those 6 months. Build the history that never happened. Adrian pulled out his phone, opened a notes app. Catherine put together a timeline. Where we met, our first date, the first time you stayed over, when I proposed. But timelines aren't enough. We need the texture. The fights we had, the inside jokes, the way you take your coffee, the things that drive me crazy about you. You mean the things that should drive you crazy about me, since we've never actually dated? Right. He looked at her, and something in his expression made her chest tight. So let's fix that. They spent the rest of the afternoon building a relationship that had never existed. Adrian ordered Thai food, apparently their favorite compromise when they couldn't agree on dinner, and they sat on the floor of his too-perfect living room with containers of pad thai and spring rolls spread between them, constructing a fiction so detailed it started to feel like memory. "First date," Adrian said, reading from Catherine's notes. "October 15th. I took you to a small Italian place in the North End. You ordered the mushroom risotto. Did I like it? You said it was good but too salty. You're picky about food." "Am I?" Elara grabbed a spring roll. "Because right now I'm eating takeout on a billionaire's floor. I don't seem that picky. That's because this is real. On our fake first date, you sent back the wine twice because it wasn't the right temperature." Elara laughed despite herself. "I sound terrible." "You sound like someone who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to ask for it." Adrian's voice was quieter. "I like that about you, that you didn't try to impress me or make things easy. You were just yourself." The way he said it, like he was talking about something that had actually happened, made Elara's pulse skip. "What did you order?" she asked, needing to break the moment. "The veal. You gave me a lecture about the ethics of veal production that lasted 20 minutes. "Oh, God, I actually did ruin the first date." "No, you made it interesting." He was smiling now, a real smile that transformed his whole face. "I was used to women who agreed with everything I said, who laughed at jokes that weren't funny, who performed for me. You argued with me about factory farming over expensive wine. It was the best first date I'd ever had. Even though it was fake." "Even though it was fake," he agreed. They kept going. Second date at a botanical garden where Elara talked too much about plant taxonomy and Adrian pretended to be interested. Third date, where he took her to a shooting range and she refused to touch a gun, which led to their first real argument. Fourth date, where they walked through the city for hours, talking about everything and nothing, and he almost kissed her but chickened out. "Why did you chicken out?" Elara asked, caught up in the story despite herself. "Because you were different." Adrian's voice was soft. "Because I knew if I kissed you, everything would change, and I wasn't ready for that yet." "When did you kiss me?" "In the story." Date 7. I picked you up from your clinic after a late emergency surgery. You were exhausted, covered in dog hair, complaining about a beagle who'd eaten a sock, and you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Alara's throat was tight. That's a good story. It has to be. But the way he was looking at her didn't feel like storytelling. It felt like something else entirely. Her phone rang, shattering the moment. Her mother's name flashed on the screen. I should take this, Alara said, standing up quickly. She's been calling non-stop. She walked to the windows, pressed accept, and braced herself. Alara Marie Hayes, you have exactly 30 seconds to explain why I had to learn about my daughter's engagement from the internet. Hi, Mom. I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Don't get smart with me. Who is this man? Adrian Voss? I looked him up. His father was connected to organized crime. The articles say a lot of things. Most of them are speculation. Alara could feel Adrian watching her from across the room. Adrian's legitimate, Mom. He runs import businesses and real estate. It's all legal. Then why does he look like he could kill someone with his bare hands? Despite everything, Alara almost laughed. He's just intense. It's not a crime to have a strong jaw. Don't deflect. How long have you known him? Why didn't you tell me you were seeing someone? It's complicated. Complicated how? Alara, this isn't like you. You don't do impulsive. You don't date dangerous-looking billionaires. You date nice boys who work in veterinary research and want to settle down in the suburbs. Maybe I'm tired of nice boys. The words came out sharper than Alara intended. Maybe I wanted something different for once in my life. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Are you safe? Tell me honestly. Because if you're in trouble, if this man is pressuring you... I'm safe, Mom, I promise. Adrian treats me well. Better than well. Then why do you sound scared? Alara closed her eyes. Her mother had always been able to read her, even over the phone, even through lies. Because it's all happening so fast, she said, which was at least partially true. And I'm not sure I know what I'm doing, but I'm okay, really. Another pause, then, I want to meet him. Your father and I both do. If you're serious about this man, if you're really going to marry him, we need to meet him first. Alara's mind raced. Bringing Adrian home to meet her parents would mean more lies, more performance, more threads to keep straight. But it would also make the story more believable, more real. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll talk to Adrian. We'll figure something out. They talked for a few more minutes, her mother extracting promises to call more often and to send photos and to please be careful. When Alara finally hung up, she felt exhausted. Adrian was still on the floor, containers of Thai food forgotten. Your mother wants to meet me, he said. It wasn't a question. She's protective and suspicious, and probably reading every tabloid article about you right now. What did you tell her? That you're legitimate and intense and treat me well. Alara moved back to sit across from him. Was that okay? Should I have said something different? No, that was perfect. He paused. Do you want to do it? Bring me home to meet your parents? Do we have a choice? If we're supposedly engaged, eventually they'll need to meet you. Eventually, yes. But Alara, he looked at her seriously. Meeting your parents means dragging them into this, making them part of the lie. Are you okay with that? She thought about her parents in their small house in suburban Michigan, her father who still worked at the hardware store he'd managed for 30 years, her mother who volunteered at the library and made casseroles for sick neighbors. Simple people living simple lives. Bringing Adrian into that world felt like contamination, but not bringing him felt like an admission that none of this was real. We'll figure it out later, she said. Right now we need to focus on tomorrow night, on Constantine. Adrian nodded, accepting the deflection. Right. So, more history. The night I proposed? Wait, Alara interrupted him. I need to know something first. Something real, not from Catherine's timeline. Okay, why are you really doing this? Not the surface answer about going legitimate. The real reason. She met his eyes across the takeout containers. Because this is exhausting and dangerous and complicated. You could have found 100 easier ways to convince people you've changed. So why this? Why me? Adrian was quiet for a long time, long enough that Alara thought he might not answer. Because I'm tired of being alone, he said finally. I've spent 3 years trying to dismantle my father's empire, and the whole time, I've been doing it by myself. No one to trust, no one to talk to, no one who sees me as anything other than Marcus Voss's son or a criminal trying to go clean or a mark to be used. He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes was almost painful. And then you showed up in that hotel bar, and you helped me without knowing anything about me, without wanting anything from me. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel alone. Alara's chest ached. Adrian, I know it's not fair, he continued. I know I'm using you, even with the contract and the money and all the precautions. But you asked for the truth, and that's it. I asked you to be my fake fiancée because I wanted someone on my side, someone who chose to be there, even temporarily. The honesty of it sat between them like something alive. I chose this, Alara said quietly. I keep choosing it. That has to count for something. It counts for everything. They held each other's gaze, and Alara felt the air shift between them, felt the performance start to crack, revealing something underneath that was more real and more dangerous than any of Constantine's threats. Adrian looked away first, clearing his throat. We should keep going, he said. The proposal. You need to know how I asked. So they kept building their fictional history, adding layers and details until the story felt solid enough to stand on. By the time they finished, it was past midnight, and Alara's brain felt like it had been wrung out and hung up to dry. Get some sleep, Adrian said as they cleaned up the takeout containers. Tomorrow's going to be intense. More intense than today? Significantly. Alara went to bed but couldn't sleep. She lay in the too big bed in the too expensive room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Adrian's words, about loneliness and choice and the weird space between truth and fiction they were inhabiting. Somewhere around 3 a.m, she got up and padded down the hall. The penthouse was dark except for a light coming from Adrian's study. She found him there, sitting at his desk with a glass of whiskey and a stack of documents that looked legal and dense. Can't sleep either? She asked from the doorway. He looked up, surprised. Did I wake you? No, my brain won't shut off. She came into the room, sat in the chair across from his desk. What are you working on? Contracts. I'm selling off some of my father's old businesses, the ones I can't clean up. He took a sip of whiskey. Trying to, anyway. It's complicated when half your business partners are criminals who don't want paper trails. Can I ask you something that might be rude? At this point, I think we're past politeness. Do you miss it? Alara gestured vaguely. The old life, the power, the money, the fear. It must have been easier in some ways. Adrian was quiet for a moment, considering. Sometimes, he admitted, when I was my father's son, people didn't question me. They didn't challenge me. They were too afraid. And there was a simplicity to that. A clarity. He set down his glass. But I also couldn't sleep at night. Couldn't look at myself in the mirror without seeing him staring back. So no, I don't miss it enough to go back. Even if trying to leave kills you? Even then. He met her eyes. Some things are worth dying for. Like what? Like the chance to be someone different, someone better. He paused. Someone you might actually want to marry for real someday. The words hung in the air between them, too honest and too dangerous. Alara stood abruptly. I should let you work. Alara, this. Good night, Adrian. She fled before he could say anything else, before the walls between performance and reality could crumble any further. The next day arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train. Alara spent the morning with a stylist Adrian had hired, a terrifyingly efficient woman named Simone, who looked at Alara's attempt at business casual and actually winced. No, 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 Simone said, pulling clothes from the bags she'd brought. Konstantin Volkov is old-world Russian aristocracy. He expects elegance, sophistication, traditional femininity. You need to look like you belong at Adrian's side, not like you're going to a parent-teacher conference. 3 hours later, Alara barely recognized herself. The dress was deep emerald silk that clung in all the right places. The heels were higher than anything she'd ever worn, and her hair was swept up in something that Simone called effortless elegance, but had taken 45 minutes to achieve. Better, Simone declared. Now you look like a woman worth starting a war over. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be, darling. Adrian was in the kitchen when Alara emerged, talking on the phone in what sounded like Russian. He looked up, saw her, and stopped mid-sentence. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, and hung up without waiting for a response. "Is it too much?" Alara asked, suddenly self-conscious. "No, it's—" He seemed to be struggling for words. "You look beautiful." "Simone's work, not mine. Simone didn't make your eyes that color, or give you that smile." He moved closer, his gaze traveling over her in a way that made her skin feel warm. "Constantine is going to take one look at you and understand exactly why I'd burn my father's empire to the ground to keep you. That's the idea, right? Sell the performance." "Right, the performance." But something in his voice suggested he wasn't thinking about performance at all. They spent the afternoon preparing the penthouse. Adrian's security team swept the apartment for listening devices, apparently a standard precaution when Constantine was visiting. The chef he'd hired for the evening arrived and started preparing a meal that smelled incredible and probably cost more than Alara's monthly salary. By 6 o'clock, everything was ready. The table was set with china that looked antique and expensive. Wine was breathing in crystal decanters, and soft classical music played from invisible speakers. "Remember," Adrian said, straightening his tie for the third time, "we've been together 6 months. We're comfortable with each other, in love, planning a wedding. I know the story. And if Constantine asks anything you don't know the answer to, I deflect to you or make a joke. I know, Adrian. We've been over this a dozen times." "I'm nervous," he admitted. "Constantine is dangerous, but he's also smart. If he suspects, he won't." Alara reached up, adjusted his tie herself. "We're good at this. Better than we should be, honestly." Adrian's hand came up to cover hers where it rested on his chest. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for doing this, for being here. Where else would I be?" The doorbell rang, cutting off whatever he might have said next. Konstantin Volkov arrived with an entourage that would have been comical if it wasn't terrifying. 2 bodyguards who looked like they bench-pressed small cars, a beautiful woman who Konstantin introduced as his associate Irina, and an air of menace that filled the penthouse like smoke. "Adrian," Konstantin greeted, his accent thick and his smile sharp. "And Dr. Hayes, how lovely to see you again in more pleasant circumstances." "Mr. Volkov," Alara said, offering her hand. "Thank you for coming." He took her hand, but instead of shaking it, he brought it to his lips in a gesture that felt invasive and possessive. "Please, call me Constantine. We are practically family now, yes?" Adrian's hand found the small of Alara's back, a subtle claim. "Dinner is ready," he said smoothly. "Shall we?" The meal was excruciating. Constantine asked questions that seemed innocuous on the surface but were clearly designed to trip them up. Where exactly had they met? What had Adrian been wearing? What had they talked about? Alara answered carefully, sticking to the script they'd built, watching Adrian's face for cues. "And the proposal," Constantine said, cutting into his beef with surgical precision. "Adrian is not known for grand romantic gestures. How did he ask?" Alara felt Adrian tense beside her. This was one of the details they'd fought about. Catherine had suggested something public and dramatic. Adrian had argued for something private and meaningful. They'd settled on a compromise that felt risky now, under Constantine's cold gaze. "It was after a terrible day," Alara said, setting down her fork. "I'd lost a patient, a golden retriever I'd been treating for weeks. The owner was devastated, and I felt like I'd failed. I came home exhausted and sad, and Adrian was waiting. He'd made dinner, even though he can barely cook. Burned the chicken, actually." Adrian's lips quirked, a real smile breaking through the tension. "I ordered pizza," he added, after the smoke alarm went off. "We ate pizza on the living room floor," Alara continued, the story feeling real as she told it. "And Adrian said that he wanted to spend the rest of his life making sure I had someone to come home to on the terrible days. That even when everything else went wrong, I'd have him." She wasn't looking at Constantine anymore. She was looking at Adrian, and the expression on his face made her forget they were performing. "And then he pulled out the ring," she finished quietly, "and asked me to marry him." The table was silent. Constantine studied them both, his gaze moving between them like a surgeon looking for the incision point. "That is a very sweet story," he said finally. "Very believable." The way he said it made Alara's blood run cold. Believable? Adrian's voice was carefully neutral. You have always been a good liar, Adrian. Your father taught you well. Constantine took a sip of wine. But I wonder, is Dr. Hayes real, or is she another move in whatever game you're playing? She's real, Adrian said, his hand finding Alara's under the table. The most real thing in my life. Prove it. The challenge hung in the air like a blade. Adrian stood, pulling Alara to her feet with him. You want proof? He said, his voice low and dangerous. Here's your proof. He kissed her. Not a performance kiss. Not a gentle brush of lips for show. He kissed her like he meant it, one hand tangling in her carefully styled hair, the other at her waist, pulling her close. And Alara, caught off guard, responded without thinking. Her hands came up to his chest, then his shoulders, then into his hair, and she kissed him back like the past 3 days of carefully maintained distance had been killing her. It lasted maybe 10 seconds, maybe a lifetime. When Adrian pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Satisfied? Adrian said to Constantine, his eyes never leaving Alara's face. Constantine laughed, slow and amused. Yes, he said. I believe I am. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Constantine's questions became less pointed, more social. He talked about business opportunities, about mutual acquaintances, about the charity gala next week. But Alara barely heard any of it. She was too aware of Adrian beside her, of the phantom feeling of his lips on hers, of the way something fundamental had shifted between them. When Constantine finally left, 3 hours and countless tests later, Alara collapsed onto the couch, her entire body shaking with adrenaline and relief. We did it, she said. He believed us. Yeah. Adrian's voice was strange, distant. She looked up to find him standing by the windows, his back to her. Adrian, I need to tell you something, he said. Alara's stomach dropped. What? He turned, and the expression on his face made her heart stutter. That kiss, he said. I didn't plan it. Constantine demanded proof, and I panicked, and He stopped, started again. But when I kissed you, Alara, it wasn't for him. It wasn't for the performance. Then what was it for? It was for me. His voice was raw. Because I've been wanting to do that since the moment you sat down at that hotel bar. And I know that's not fair. I know that's not what you signed up for, but you asked me to be honest, and that's the truth. I'm falling for you, for real. And it's the worst possible thing that could happen, but I can't seem to stop it. Alara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Say something, Adrian said quietly. Please. She stood, crossed the space between them, and kissed him again. This time there was no audience, no performance, no reason except that she wanted to. When they broke apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he whispered. The worst, she agreed. We should probably stop. Probably. Neither of them moved. Alara. His phone rang, shattering the moment. Adrian pulled back, checked the screen, and his face went pale. What? Alara asked. It's Catherine. She never calls this late unless... He answered. What's wrong? Alara watched his expression shift from concern to horror. When? He demanded. How bad? A pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, already moving toward the door. Adrian, what happened? Constantine's men just firebombed one of my warehouses, he said, his voice flat. The one I was using to store shipments I was supposed to be moving for him. The one I refused to use because the cargo was illegal. Is anyone hurt? 3 of my security team are in the hospital. The building's a total loss. He grabbed his jacket. And there's a message spray-painted on the street outside. Stop playing house and get back to business. Alara's blood ran cold. He knows. He never believed us. Or he believed us and decided I'm too distracted by you to be useful anymore. Adrian's hands were shaking as he buttoned his jacket. Either way, this is a message, a warning. Next time, it won't be a warehouse. What are you going to do? He looked at her, and the fear in his eyes was more terrifying than anything else that had happened tonight. I'm going to end this, he said, before it ends us. Alara grabbed her coat before Adrian could tell her to stay behind. I'm coming with you, she said. No, you're not. He was already at the door, keys in hand. This isn't a negotiation, Alara. It's dangerous, and you're staying here where it's safe. Safe? She followed him into the hallway. Constantine just burned down your warehouse to send you a message about me. I'm already in this. Hiding in your penthouse doesn't change that. Adrian stopped, spun to face her. 3 of my people are in the hospital. 3 people who work for me, who trusted me to keep them safe. I won't add you to that list. Then don't. But I'm not sitting here alone while you walk into whatever this is. She met his eyes. We're in this together, remember? That was the deal. The deal was that I'd keep you safe. The deal was that I'd be your partner. Partners don't abandon each other when things get bad. They stared at each other in the hallway, both stubborn, both scared. Adrian broke first, his shoulders sagging. You stay in the car. You don't get out, you don't interfere, and if I tell you to leave, you leave. Understood? Understood. The drive to the warehouse took 30 minutes through city traffic that Adrian navigated with barely controlled rage. He was on the phone the entire time, barking orders at his security team, at Catherine, at people whose names Alara didn't recognize. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. How are they? Alara asked during a brief pause between calls. Your people, the ones who were hurt. Burns, smoke inhalation. One has a broken leg from trying to escape through a second-story window. His jaw was so tight she thought it might crack. They're alive. That's all that matters. Did Constantine know they'd be there? Was this meant to kill them or just scare you? With Constantine, it's always both. He knew the warehouse was mostly empty this time of night, but he also knew someone would be there for security. He wanted casualties without mass murder. Wanted me to understand what he's capable of without going so far that I have no choice but to retaliate. And if you do retaliate, then we're at war. And wars in this world don't end cleanly. Adrian took a sharp turn, tires squealing. But if I don't respond, I look weak. Every other network in the city will see that Constantine can burn my property and hurt my people without consequences. I'll be finished. Alara understood the trap he was in, respond too aggressively, and escalate into something that would destroy everything he'd been trying to build. Respond too weakly and lose whatever credibility he had left. There has to be a third option, she said. If there is, I haven't found it yet. The warehouse was in an industrial area near the docks, surrounded by other buildings that looked abandoned or close to it. Fire trucks were still there, along with police cars and an ambulance. The building itself was a smoking ruin. The roof collapsed, flames still visible through broken windows. Adrian parked a block away and turned to Alara. Stay here, lock the doors. If anything, and I mean anything, feels wrong, you drive away. Don't wait for me, don't call me, just go. Adrian, promise me, Alara. She looked at his face, at the fear barely contained beneath the anger, and nodded. I promise. He kissed her forehead, quick and desperate, then got out of the car. Alara watched him approach the scene, watched him talk to the fire chief and then to a detective who'd arrived. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself like he was bracing for impact. Her phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Where are you? Adrian isn't answering. With him. At the warehouse. 3 dots appeared, then, get him out of there. Police are asking questions he can't afford to answer right now. Alara looked up to see the detective gesturing toward a police car, clearly wanting Adrian to come downtown for a statement. She got out of the car. Adrian saw her immediately, and his expression went from worried to furious in half a second. But before he could say anything, Alara was at his side, slipping her hand into his. Dr. Hayes, the detective said, surprised. I didn't realize you were here. I was with Adrian when he got the call, Alara said smoothly. We came straight from dinner. Is there something we can help you with, Detective? Morrison, Detective Morrison. He flipped open a notebook. I was just asking Mr. Voss about the warehouse. What was stored here? Who had access? Whether he has any idea who might have done this? I store legitimate shipping containers, Adrian said, his voice carefully neutral. Furniture, electronics, textiles. All legal, all documented. As for who did this, I have no idea, but I'd very much like to find out. Morrison's expression said he didn't believe a word of it. No enemies, no business disputes, no one who might want to send you a message? I'm sure you've done your research, Detective. I'm sure you know my father's history. Adrian's voice was hard. But whatever wars he was fighting, they died with him. My businesses are legitimate. My associations are clean. This was either random arson or a case of mistaken identity. Mistaken identity? Morrison wrote that down like it was the punchline to a joke. Right. Well, Mr. Voss, I'm going to need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement. Just routine. My fiancé just watched his property burn down, Alara interrupted. 3 of his employees are in the hospital. I think routine questioning can wait until tomorrow when he's had a chance to process this. Morrison looked at her, reassessing. Dr. Hayes, I understand you're upset, but this is a criminal investigation. Mr. Voss needs to cooperate. And he will, tomorrow, with his lawyer present. Alara's voice was steady, channeling every difficult client conversation she'd ever had. Right now, we're going to the hospital to check on his injured employees. Unless you're planning to arrest him, Detective? Morrison's jaw tightened. Not at this time. Then we'll see you tomorrow. Alara tugged on Adrian's hand. Come on, let's go check on your people. They made it back to the car before Adrian spoke. I told you to stay in the car. I did, for about 5 minutes. Then I saw you about to get pulled into a police interrogation without Catherine present and made an executive decision. An executive decision. Despite everything, his mouth quirked. You just told a police detective to back off. I told him you'd cooperate tomorrow with proper representation. That's different. Alara started the car. Where's the hospital? Adrian directed her through the streets, still looking at her like he couldn't quite figure out what she was. You're good at this, he said finally. At what? At being on my side. At knowing when to step in and when to back off. At making it believable that we're actually together. Alara's hands tightened on the wheel. Maybe it's not that hard to make it believable. Adrian went very still. Alara, not now, she said quickly. We need to focus. Your people are hurt, Constantine is escalating, and we still have that charity gala in 3 days where you're supposed to make your big break with your father's network. We can deal with whatever this is between us after we survive the week. And if we don't survive the week? She glanced at him. Then I guess it won't matter, will it? The hospital was one of those expensive private facilities where the waiting rooms had actual art, and the coffee didn't taste like despair. Adrian's 3 employees were all in stable condition, according to the nurse who met them. Burns were being treated, the broken leg was set, and they'd all be released within a few days. Adrian insisted on seeing each of them personally. Alara waited in the hallway while he spoke to the first one, a young guy named Marcus, who looked terrified and in pain. She couldn't hear what Adrian said, but she saw the way Marcus's expression shifted from fear to something like relief. Adrian squeezed his shoulder, said something else, then came back out. What did you tell him? Alara asked. That this wasn't his fault, that his medical bills are covered and he's getting a bonus for hazard pay, and that I'm going to make sure the people who did this answer for it. Can you make them answer for it? I don't know yet. Adrian's voice was hollow, but I had to tell him something. They visited the other 2 employees, a woman named Sarah with burns on her arms, and a man named James who'd broken his leg jumping from the window. Adrian said similar things to each of them, calm and reassuring, the kind of boss who took care of his people. But in the hallway afterward, he leaned against the wall and looked like he might be sick. This is my fault, he said quietly. I brought them into this. I kept them working for a company everyone knows is connected to criminal networks, and I told myself it was fine because I was cleaning it up. And now they're hurt because of decisions I made. Alara moved to stand in front of him. Constantine did this, not you. I gave him the ammunition, by refusing his deal, by trying to go straight, by being with you. He stopped. By pretending to be with you, by making him think I was serious about leaving. You are serious about leaving. Yeah, and look where that got me. A burned warehouse, injured employees, and a war I can't afford to fight. He scrubbed his hands over his face. Maybe I should just give him what he wants. Go back to running his shipments, moving his contraband, being my father's son. At least then people wouldn't get hurt. You don't believe that. Right now, I don't know what I believe. Alara grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. Listen to me. Constantine didn't do this because you're leaving. He did it because he's losing control and he's scared. You're proving that people can walk away from this life, that they can build something better. That terrifies him. So he's trying to pull you back in, make you think you don't have a choice. Maybe I don't. You always have a choice. That's the whole point. She softened her voice. You told me you were tired of running from what your father built, that you wanted to prove you could be different. Was that true, or was it just part of the performance? Adrian closed his eyes. It was true. Then don't let one warehouse make you give up. Don't let Constantine win. He pulled her close, holding her tight enough that she could feel his heart racing against her chest. I don't know how to do this, he whispered into her hair. I don't know how to fight him without becoming him. Then we'll figure it out together. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in a hospital hallway while fluorescent lights hummed overhead and nurses passed by pretending not to notice. When Adrian's phone rang again, they both flinched. He checked it, and his expression went from exhausted to alert in an instant. It's Catherine. She found something. He answered on speaker. What do you have? Proof. Catherine's voice came through clipped and professional. Proof that Constantine ordered the hit. Security footage from a camera across the street shows his men setting the fire. Plates on the van they use trace back to a shell company he controls. And I have a witness, one of the dock workers, who saw them and is willing to testify. Adrian's jaw clenched. That's not proof we can use. If I go to the police with this, Constantine will know I'm working against him. It'll escalate beyond anything we can control. I'm not suggesting you go to the police. Catherine's voice was careful. I'm suggesting you use it for leverage. You have the charity gala in 3 days. Half the city's elite will be there, including federal investigators who've been building a case against Constantine's network for years. What if you gave them what they need to finally move on him? Alara felt Adrian's entire body tense. You're suggesting I become an informant, he said flatly. I'm suggesting you protect yourself and your business by helping law enforcement take down someone who just tried to destroy you. There's a difference. Not to the people in my father's world. If they find out I cooperated with federal agents, I'm dead. Alara's dead. Everyone I care about becomes a target. Only if they find out, Catherine countered. But if you do this right, if you time it perfectly at the gala, you can expose Constantine publicly while making it look like you had no choice, like you were forced to defend yourself. The other networks will understand that. They might even respect it. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Alara could see him running calculations, weighing risks, trying to find a path that didn't end in disaster. Who are these federal investigators? He asked finally. FBI. They've been watching Constantine for 3 years building a RICO case. They have everything except proof of the violence. Proof that he orders hits, that he uses intimidation and murder to maintain control. Catherine paused. Proof like a firebombed warehouse and 3 hospitalized employees. And if I give them that proof, they can arrest him. They can arrest him, freeze his assets, and dismantle his entire network. Within days. It sounded too good to be true. Alara could see Adrian thinking the same thing. What's the catch? He asked. The catch is that you have to wear a wire to the gala. You have to get Constantine talking about the warehouse, admitting what he did and why. And you have to do it in front of enough witnesses that he can't claim it's fabricated. Catherine's voice was steady. It's risky. If Constantine suspects anything, if he searches you or checks for surveillance, it's over. But it's also the cleanest way out of this that I can see. Adrian looked at Alara. She could see the question in his eyes, the fear, and the desperate hope. What do you think? He asked quietly. The fact that he was asking her, that he valued her opinion on something this important, made her chest tight. I think it's terrifying, she said honestly. I think it could go wrong in 100 different ways, but I also think you're out of good options. And if this works, you're free, really free. No more Constantine, no more having to choose between your father's empire and the life you actually want. And if it doesn't work, then we run fast and far, and we figure out the rest later. Adrian turned back to the phone. Set up the meeting with the FBI. I want to talk to them myself, understand exactly what they need and what they're offering in exchange. I'll arrange it for tomorrow morning. Catherine's relief was audible. Adrian, this is the right call. I know it doesn't feel like it, but this is the way out. I hope you're right. He hung up and immediately pulled Alara close again. I'm scared. I know. If this goes wrong, if Constantine figures it out, then we deal with it, together. She pulled back enough to look at him. But Adrian, you need to understand something. If you do this, if you really commit to taking down Constantine and breaking with your father's world, there's no going back. You'll have made your choice. I made my choice the night I met you, he said quietly. Everything since then has just been me trying to figure out how to survive it. They drove back to the penthouse in the early hours of the morning, exhausted and wired and holding hands across the center console like letting go would mean drowning. The penthouse felt different when they walked in, less like a showcase and more like the place where they'd kissed, where they'd built a fictional history that was becoming more real by the day, where they'd admitted things to each other that neither of them had planned to say. "You should sleep," Adrian said, but he didn't move toward his room. "So should you." "I don't think I can. My brain won't stop running scenarios, trying to figure out what could go wrong." Alara made a decision that was probably stupid, but felt inevitable. "Come on." She led him to the living room, to the same couch where they'd eaten Thai food and built their fake relationship. She sat down and pulled him down beside her, then shifted so his head was resting on her lap. "What are you doing?" he asked, looking up at her. "Giving you permission to stop thinking for 5 minutes." She ran her fingers through his hair, gentle and rhythmic. "Just breathe. We'll deal with everything else tomorrow." Adrian closed his eyes, his entire body slowly relaxing under her touch. "This isn't part of the contract," he murmured. "No, it's not. We're crossing all kinds of lines. I know. We should probably stop." "Probably." She kept stroking his hair. "But we're not going to." "No, we're not." He caught her free hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. "Alara?" "Yeah?" "When this is over, when Constantine's in prison and my father's empire is finally dismantled and I don't have to look over my shoulder every 5 minutes, can we try this for real?" Her hand stilled in his hair. "Try what for real?" "Us. This. Whatever we're pretending to be." He opened his eyes, looking up at her with an honesty that made her ache. "I know it started as a business arrangement. I know you signed on to help me convince people I'd changed, not to actually fall for the person I'm trying to become. But somewhere between that hotel bar and right now, this stopped being fake for me. And I need to know if there's any chance it stopped being fake for you too." Alara looked down at him, at this man who was dangerous and trying not to be, who was carrying the weight of an empire he never wanted, who trusted her with pieces of himself she knew he'd never shown anyone else. "It stopped being fake about 3 days ago," she admitted. "Maybe sooner. I'm not sure exactly when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending." Adrian sat up, turned to face her. "You mean that? I'm terrified of what it means, and I have no idea how we make this work long term, and I'm probably going to regret this in the morning, but yes, I mean it." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and nothing like the performance they'd put on for Constantine. This was just them. No audience, no agenda, just two people who'd found each other in the middle of chaos and decided to hold on. When they broke apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "We're idiots," he said. "Complete idiots. This is going to make everything more complicated. Significantly more complicated. But you're not running. Not yet." She smiled. "Ask me again after you wear a wire to confront a violent criminal at a charity gala." "Deal." They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, while the city lights glittered through the windows and the first light of dawn started to creep across the sky. The meeting with the FBI was scheduled for 8 in the morning in a neutral location, a law office across town that Catherine had arranged. Adrian was quiet during the drive, his hand gripping Alara's like it was the only thing keeping him anchored. "You don't have to come in with me," he said as they pulled up. "This is just me and Catherine and the feds. You can wait in the car." "After the warehouse?" "Not a chance." Alara unbuckled her seatbelt. "I'm your fiancée, remember? Where you go, I go." The agents were exactly what Alara expected. Professional, serious, wearing suits that didn't quite fit right, and expressions that suggested they'd seen too much. The lead agent introduced herself as Special Agent Sarah Chen, mid-40s with sharp eyes and a handshake that meant business. "Mr. Voss," she said, gesturing to a conference table. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "I didn't have much choice," Adrian said, sitting down. "Konstantin Volkov just burned down my warehouse and hospitalized 3 of my employees. Catherine suggested you might be able to help with that." "We can, if you're willing to help us." Agent Chen opened a folder spreading out photos and documents. "We've been investigating Volkov's organization for 3 years. Weapons trafficking, drug distribution, extortion, money laundering. We have enough to charge him, but nothing that will stick long term. What we need is evidence of the violence, direct proof that he orders attacks, that he uses fear and intimidation to maintain control. And you think I can give you that proof? We know you can. Chen slid a photo across the table, security footage of Constantine's men outside Adrian's warehouse. Catherine provided this. It's a start. But what we really need is him on tape admitting to it, explaining why he did it, what he wanted to accomplish. Adrian stared at the photo. You want me to wear a wire to the charity gala. Get him talking about the warehouse while you record it. That's exactly what we want. And if he finds the wire, if he suspects anything, then you're in serious danger, Chen said bluntly. I won't lie to you, Mr. Voss. This is risky, but it's also your best chance at getting out from under his control. We arrest Volkov, freeze his assets, dismantle his network, and you walk away clean. No charges, no retaliation, no more looking over your shoulder. Adrian looked at Alara. She could see him trying to decide if this was worth the risk. What about her? He asked, nodding toward Alara. If I do this, if I testify against Constantine, she becomes a target too. What protection can you offer? Witness protection if necessary. New identities, relocation, full security detail until the trial is over and Volkov is sentenced. Chen's voice softened slightly. We take care of our witnesses, Mr. Voss. Both of you would be safe. Witness protection means leaving everything behind, Alara said quietly. Our lives, our jobs, our families. Only if it comes to that. If we move fast enough, if we catch Volkov off guard, you might not need it. But yes, it's a possibility you should be prepared for. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Adrian straightened his shoulders and looked Agent Chen in the eye. I'll do it, he said, but I have conditions. I'm listening. My employees, the ones who are hurt in the warehouse fire. You make sure they're protected. Security details, medical expenses, everything. They didn't sign up for this, and they don't deserve to be collateral damage. Done. And Catherine stays involved. Every step of this, she's in the loop. I don't make a move without her approval. Agreed. And Alara. Adrian's hand found hers under the table. She gets full protection starting now. Not just for the gala, but until Constantine is in prison and his entire organization is dismantled. I won't do this if there's any chance she gets hurt because of my decisions. Agent Chen looked at Alara, then back at Adrian. She'll have a full security detail. Round-the-clock protection. You have my word. Adrian nodded. Then let's do this. They spent the next 2 hours going over the plan. The wire would be sewn into Adrian's clothing for the gala, hidden so well that even a thorough search wouldn't find it. Agent Chen would coach him on how to guide the conversation, what questions to ask, how to get Constantine talking without making it obvious that's what he was doing. The key is to seem angry, Chen explained. Defensive. Like you're confronting him about the warehouse because you're offended, not because you're collecting evidence. Let your emotions drive the conversation. That's when people slip up and say things they shouldn't. I don't have to fake the anger, Adrian said darkly. That part's real. By the time they finished, Alara's head was spinning with details and contingencies and backup plans. The gala was in 2 days. 48 hours to prepare, to practice, to get ready for the performance of Adrian's life. In the car afterward, Adrian was quiet. Say something, Alara said finally. I just committed to wearing a wire and confronting a violent criminal while the FBI records it, Adrian said. I'm not sure what there is to say. You could say you're scared, or that you're having second thoughts, or that you want to run away and never look back. All of those things, he looked at her, but also that I'm glad you're here, that I'm not doing this alone. Alara squeezed his hand. You're never doing this alone, not anymore. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Adrian practiced the conversation with Catherine, running through different scenarios, different ways Constantine might respond. Alara met with the security team that would be protecting her. Serious men and women who treated her safety like a military operation. The dress for the gala arrived. Midnight blue silk that made Alara feel like someone else, someone who belonged in Adrian's world. Simone came back to do her hair and makeup, transforming her into a version of herself that looked confident and untouchable. You look beautiful, Adrian said when he saw her, and the rawness in his voice made her believe it. He was in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her car, looking every inch the powerful businessman except for his eyes. His eyes were terrified. Ready? He asked. No, but let's do it anyway. The gala was at a museum downtown, the kind of event where champagne flowed like water, and everyone was beautiful and no one talked about anything real. Adrian's hand was on her back as they walked in, and Alara could feel the tension in his body, the way he was scanning the room for threats. Constantine was there, of course, holding court near the bar, surrounded by people who laughed at his jokes and pretended not to notice the violence in his smile. "He sees us," Alara murmured. "Good. Let him." Adrian guided her toward the opposite side of the room. "We're not approaching him first. We're making him come to us." They mingled for an hour, Adrian introducing Alara to business associates and donors and people whose names she forgot immediately. The whole time she could feel Constantine watching them, waiting. And then, finally, he made his move. "Adrian," Constantine said, appearing at Adrian's elbow like smoke. "And the lovely Dr. Hayes. How wonderful to see you both." "Constantine," Adrian's voice was cold. "Quite a coincidence, running into you here. Is it? I thought perhaps you'd be too busy dealing with that unfortunate fire to attend social events." Constantine's smile was razor sharp. "How are your employees? I heard several were injured." Adrian's hand tightened on Alara's waist. Warning or reassurance, she couldn't tell. "They're recovering, no thanks to whoever burned down my warehouse." Adrian's voice was hard, angry, exactly like Agent Chen had coached. "But I'm sure you wouldn't know anything about that." "Why would I know anything about it?" Constantine took a sip of champagne. "Unless you're implying something." "I'm implying that someone sent me a very clear message, and I'm wondering what I'm supposed to do about it." This was it. The moment where Constantine either took the bait or walked away. Constantine studied Adrian for a long moment, then he smiled. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private," he said. "The terrace, maybe?" Adrian nodded. The terrace. As they moved through the crowd, Alara's heart was hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it. This was happening. Adrian was about to walk into a confrontation with a man who'd already proven he was willing to use violence, and all he had for protection was a wire sewn into his jacket and FBI agents scattered through the crowd. On the terrace, the night air was cold and sharp. Constantine's bodyguards materialized from the shadows, creating a barrier between them and any other guests who might wander out. "Now then," Constantine said, all pretense of politeness dropping away. "Let's talk honestly, Adrian. You've been testing my patience for months, refusing deals, cutting ties with our mutual associates, pretending you're going legitimate. And then you show up with this woman." He gestured dismissively at Alara. "Well, but and suddenly, you're too busy playing house to honor your father's agreements." "My father's dead," Adrian said flatly. "His agreements died with him." "That's not how this works, and you know it. You inherited his empire. That means you inherited his obligations." Constantine's voice went cold. "Including his partnership with me." "I don't want his partnership. I don't want anything to do with what he built." "Then you're a fool." Constantine stepped closer. "Do you think you can just walk away? That you can reject everything your father stood for, and there won't be consequences? Like burning down my warehouse? Like hospitalizing my people?" There, the admission they needed. But Constantine just smiled. "I don't know what you're talking about." Adrian's frustration was palpable, and Alara realized with a sinking feeling that Constantine wasn't going to confess. He was too smart, too careful. Unless they pushed harder. "You're a coward," Alara heard herself say. Both men turned to look at her. "Excuse me?" Constantine's voice was dangerous. "You heard me. You're a coward who hides behind intimidation and violence because you're terrified of losing control." Alara stepped forward, ignoring Adrian's warning look. "Adrian's proving that people can leave this life, that they can build something better. And that scares you. So you burn down his warehouse to try to pull him back in, to prove you still have power over him." Constantine's face went very still. "Dr. Hayes, you should be careful. You're playing in a world you don't understand." "I understand that you're desperate, that you're watching your empire crumble, and you're trying to hold it together by destroying anyone who dares to walk away. That's not power. That's pathetic." "Alara," Adrian warned, but she couldn't stop now. "You want to scare us? Fine. Burn down another warehouse. Send more threats. But Adrian's not coming back to you. He's done with this life, done with men like you, and nothing you do is going to change that." Constantine's hand moved, just slightly, and both his bodyguards shifted, and then he laughed. Brave words, Dr. Hayes. Foolish, but brave. He turned back to Adrian. I can see why you like her. She has spirit, but spirit won't protect her when you finally realize that you can't escape what you are, what your father made you. My father made me a lot of things, Adrian said quietly, but he also made me smart enough to know when I'm being threatened, and brave enough to stand against it. Then stand against it, Constantine said. Refuse my deals, play it being legitimate. But understand this, Adrian, the warehouse was just the beginning. Next time, it won't be property that burns. It'll be everything you care about. He looked at Alara when he said it, the threat explicit and clear. Then he turned and walked back inside, his bodyguards following like shadows. Adrian waited until he was gone before pulling out his phone and texting Agent Chen. Did you get it? The response came seconds later. Every word. We're moving in now. Get out of here. Adrian grabbed Alara's hand and pulled her toward a side exit, away from the gala, away from Constantine and whatever was about to happen. They made it to the car just as they heard shouting from inside the museum. Through the windows, Alara could see FBI agents moving in, could see Constantine being surrounded, could see the moment he realized what had happened. Adrian drove away fast, hands shaking on the wheel. It's done, he said, his voice hollow. It's actually done. Alara looked back at the museum, at the chaos unfolding behind them, and felt the weight of what they'd just done settle over her like a blanket. They'd won. Constantine would be arrested, charged, locked away. But as Adrian's hands trembled and the city blurred past them, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was still ahead. Adrian didn't stop driving until they were 20 miles outside the city, pulled over at a rest stop that was deserted except for a few long-haul trucks. He turned off the engine and just sat there, hands still gripping the wheel, breathing like he'd run a marathon. Adrian? Alara touched his shoulder gently. He flinched, then seemed to come back to himself. Sorry, I can't believe we actually did that. We did. Constantine's in custody. It's over. Is it? He turned to look at her, and his eyes were wild. Because right now, every person in his network is finding out that I wore a wire, that I cooperated with federal agents, that I'm the reason their boss is going to prison. Alara's stomach dropped. She'd been so focused on the immediate threat of Constantine that she hadn't thought about what came after, about the dozens of other criminals who'd see Adrian's cooperation as betrayal. Agent Chen said you'd be protected, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Agent Chen doesn't understand how this world works. You don't betray someone like Constantine and just walk away. There will be retaliation. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually someone will come for me. For us. The fear in his voice was contagious. Alara felt it spreading through her chest, making it hard to breathe. Then what do we do? She asked. Adrian's phone buzzed before he could answer. He checked it, and his expression went from terrified to cautiously relieved. It's Catherine. She wants us to come to her office. Says it's urgent. They drove back to the city in silence, both too wired to talk, both processing what had just happened. Catherine's office was lit up despite the late hour, and she met them at the door with an expression Alara couldn't quite read. Come in, she said. We need to talk. Inside, Agent Chen was waiting, along with another FBI agent Alara didn't recognize. The conference table was covered in documents and photos. Sit down, Catherine said, and something in her tone made Alara's pulse spike. What's wrong? Adrian asked, staying standing. Did something happen? Is Constantine is in federal custody, Agent Chen interrupted. And he's talking. Adrian went very still. Talking about what? Everything. His entire network, his business partners, his operations. He's offering to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. Chen's expression was carefully neutral. And Adrian, he's naming names, a lot of names, including yours. What? The word came out strangled. He's claiming you were an active participant in his criminal enterprise, that you knowingly moved illegal shipments, laundered money, facilitated weapons deals. He's trying to take you down with him. Alara felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. But that's not true. Adrian was trying to get out. He was cleaning up his father's businesses, not participating in them. We know that, Chen said, and we have evidence to prove it. The wire recording shows clearly that you refused Constantine's deals, that you were actively working against his interests. But he's going to fight this. His lawyers are going to argue that you were complicit for years before you decided to cooperate, that you only turned on him when it became convenient. Adrian sat down slowly, like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. So even though I helped you, even though I risked everything to get him on tape, I'm still going to be charged? Not if we can help it, Catherine said firmly. But Adrian, you need to understand what we're up against. Constantine has resources, connections, and lawyers who are very good at muddying the waters. This isn't going to be clean or quick. How not quick? Elara asked. Months? Maybe longer? There will be investigations, depositions, possibly a trial if Constantine's lawyers push for it. Catherine pulled out a document. Which is why Agent Chen and I have been working on something. An immunity deal. Adrian looked up sharply. What kind of immunity deal? Full immunity from prosecution in exchange for your complete cooperation. You testify against Constantine and everyone else in his network. You provide documentation of your father's old business dealings. You help the FBI dismantle the entire operation. And in return, you walk away with no charges, no criminal record, no legal consequences. It sounded too good to be true. Adrian clearly thought so too. What's the catch? He asked. The catch is that you have to give them everything, Catherine said. Every business dealing, every questionable transaction, every person your father ever worked with. You have to burn it all down, Adrian. No protecting old loyalties, no holding back. Complete transparency. Adrian's jaw tightened. Some of those people, my father worked with them for decades. They have families, legitimate businesses alongside the illegal ones. If I give the FBI everything, I'm destroying their lives too. Yes, Catherine said bluntly. You are. But the alternative is that you go to prison alongside Constantine while they walk free. Is that what you want? The silence in the room was suffocating. Elara reached for Adrian's hand under the table, lacing her fingers through his. His grip was almost painful. How long do I have to decide? He asked finally. 24 hours, Agent Chen said. After that, the offer expires and you'll be subject to the same investigation as everyone else Constantine named. 24 hours to decide whether to betray everyone my father ever trusted. Adrian's laugh was hollow. That's generous. It's 24 hours to decide whether you want to spend the rest of your life in prison or actually build the clean future you've been claiming to want. Chen's voice softened slightly. Mr. Voss, I know this isn't easy, but you've already made the hard choice. You wore that wire. You confronted Constantine. You chose to stand against everything your father built. This is just the final step. Adrian didn't respond. He just stood, still holding Elara's hand, and walked out of the office. She followed him into the hallway, into the elevator, into the parking garage. He didn't speak until they were in the car. I don't know if I can do this, he said quietly. Do what? Testify? Destroy people's lives. Some of the men my father worked with. They're not all monsters like Constantine. Some of them are just trying to survive, to provide for their families. If I give the FBI their names, their businesses, their secrets, I'm taking everything from them. Elara understood the weight he was carrying, the impossible choice between protecting people who probably didn't deserve it and protecting himself. What did your father do? She asked. When he had to make choices like this? He chose himself, every time. That's how he built his empire, by being willing to sacrifice anyone who got in his way. Adrian's voice was bitter. I spent my whole life watching him destroy people without hesitation. I swore I'd never be like that. You're not like that. You're trying to do the right thing. Am I? Because right now, the right thing looks a lot like betraying people who trusted my father, who trusted me. Did they trust you, or did they just expect you to be like your father? Elara turned in her seat to face him. Adrian, these people you're trying to protect, would they protect you if the situation was reversed? He was quiet for a long time. No, probably not. Then why are you protecting them? Because I want to be better than they are, better than my father was. And I don't know how to do that while also burning down everything he built. Elara thought about her own life before all this, about the safe, predictable path she'd been on, about how she'd spent years being careful, being good, never taking risks because she was afraid of making mistakes. You know what I've learned in the past week? She said. Being better doesn't mean being perfect. It doesn't mean never hurting anyone or never making hard choices. It means choosing the hard thing when the easy thing would destroy you. Adrian looked at her, and she saw the moment something shifted in his eyes. Some decision being made, some weight being accepted. "You're right," he said. "You're right, but that doesn't make it easier. Nothing about this has been easy. Why should the ending be any different?" His laugh was surprised and genuine. "When did you get so wise?" "About 3 days ago. I'm still getting used to it." They drove back to the penthouse, and this time when they walked in, it felt like coming home instead of entering a museum. Adrian shed his tuxedo jacket, loosened his tie, and poured them both whiskey from a bottle that probably cost more than Alara's monthly rent. "To terrible decisions," he said, raising his glass. "To surviving them," Ilara countered. They drank, and for a moment, the world felt almost normal. "I'm going to do it," Adrian said suddenly. "The immunity deal. I'm going to give them everything." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm done trying to protect my father's legacy, done trying to honor obligations that were corrupt from the start." He set down his glass. "I want to build something new, something clean, and I can't do that while still carrying his secrets." Alara moved to stand in front of him. "Then we'll build it together. Whatever comes next, we'll figure it out. Even if it means months of testimony, of depositions and trials, and watching me destroy people on the witness stand? Even then." She touched his face gently. "You're not doing this alone, Adrian. You've never been alone. Not since that night in the hotel bar." He pulled her close, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a world that was crumbling around them. "I love you," he said into her hair. "I know that's insane and too fast and probably a terrible idea, but I love you, for real. Not for the performance, not for the contract, just because you're you." Alara's chest felt too full, too tight with emotion. "I love you too," she whispered. "And you're right, it's completely insane, but I don't care anymore." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet penthouse, while the city sprawled below them, and the future waited, uncertain and terrifying, and theirs to build. The next morning, Adrian called Agent Chen and accepted the immunity deal. The weeks that followed were brutal. Adrian spent hours every day in FBI offices, going through documents, identifying associates, explaining deals his father had made decades ago. Alara watched him come home exhausted each night, watched the weight of what he was doing etch itself into the lines around his eyes. But she also watched him start to change, start to stand straighter, sleep better, breathe easier. Like each piece of his father's empire he helped dismantle was a chain falling away. Constantine went to trial 3 months later. The evidence was overwhelming: the wire recording, the witness testimony, the paper trail of violence and intimidation. He was convicted on 17 counts, including racketeering, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder. Adrian testified for 2 days straight, and Alara sat in the courtroom gallery watching him refuse to flinch even when Constantine's lawyers tried to tear him apart. When the verdict came in, Adrian didn't celebrate. He just squeezed Alara's hand and said quietly, "It's done." But it wasn't done. Not quite. There were still other trials, other criminals who'd been caught in the FBI's net. Adrian testified in 4 more cases over the next 6 months, each one chipping away at the network his father had spent a lifetime building. And then finally, it was over. The last trial concluded on a Tuesday in September. Adrian's immunity deal was finalized. The FBI closed their investigation, and Catherine called to say that Adrian was officially, legally, completely free. They were in the penthouse when she called. Alara watched Adrian take the news, saw the disbelief, then the relief, then something that looked like grief. "What's wrong?" she asked after he hung up. "Nothing. Everything." He sat down heavily on the couch. "I spent 3 years trying to get out of my father's world, 6 months destroying it piece by piece, and now it's actually gone. I don't have to answer for his crimes anymore. I don't have to carry his legacy. I'm just me. And who is that? Now that you're not Marcus Voss's son anymore?" Adrian looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled without any shadow behind it. "I guess we get to find out." Finding out turned out to be harder than either of them expected. Adrian had built his entire identity around either being his father's heir or rebelling against it. Without that framework, he was lost. He sold off most of his remaining businesses, keeping only the ones that were completely legitimate and ethical. He donated half his fortune to organizations that helped people escape organized crime, that provided resources for witness protection families, that fought the systems his father had profited from. Alara watched him transform his empire into something that actually helped people and fell in love with him all over again. "I want to do something," he said one night, 6 months after Constantine's conviction. They were in the kitchen, the one room in the penthouse that actually felt lived in now, and Adrian was attempting to cook dinner without burning it. "You're doing a lot of things," Alara pointed out, watching him massacre an onion. "You're running 3 legitimate businesses, you're funding 4 different charities, and you're currently destroying that vegetable. I mean something personal, something that's mine, not my father's." He set down the knife. "I want to propose to you, for real this time." Alara's heart stuttered. "Adrian, I know we're already engaged, technically, according to the contract and the public story and all the lies we've been telling for 8 months, but I want to ask you for real, without the performance, without the pressure, without any reason except that I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He got down on one knee right there in the kitchen, with the half-chopped onion on the counter and flour on his shirt from attempting to make pasta from scratch. "Alara Hayes," he said, "you saved my life in a hotel bar when you had every reason to walk away. You stood beside me through trials and threats and months of testimony. You loved me when I was still trying to figure out how to love myself. Will you marry me? Actually marry me, not for show, not for protection, just because we choose each other?" Alara was crying, she realized, happy tears that she didn't bother to wipe away. "Yes," she said. "Yes, you idiot, of course, yes." He stood and kissed her, and it tasted like tears and laughter, and the kind of happiness that comes from surviving something terrible together. "We should probably tell people the engagement is real now," Alara said when they broke apart. "My mother still thinks you're a criminal who's forcing me to marry you. Your mother has good instincts." "Had. Past tense. You're legitimate now, remember?" "Right. Legitimate." Adrian pulled her close. "Still getting used to that." They got married on a Saturday in May, exactly 1 year after the night they met. It was a small ceremony, just Alara's parents, Catherine, a handful of Adrian's employees who'd stuck with him through everything, and the 3 security team members who'd been hurt in the warehouse fire. No press, no performance, no one from Adrian's old world. Just 2 people who'd found each other in chaos and decided to build something real. Alara's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Her father shook Adrian's hand afterward and said, "You take care of my daughter, or I'll hunt you down myself." "Yes, sir," Adrian said seriously. "I plan to." The reception was in Adrian's house upstate, the one he'd mentioned months ago, that Alara had never actually seen. It was beautiful and too big, and absolutely nothing like the sterile penthouse, with land stretching in every direction and trees that caught the sunset. "You didn't tell me you had a forest," Alara said, looking out at the property. "I didn't tell you a lot of things. I was too busy trying not to die." Adrian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "But we have time now. All the time in the world to learn each other without the fear hanging over us. That's going to be weird. The best kind of weird." They spent their honeymoon in the mountains, in a cabin with no cell service and no internet, just them and the quiet. Adrian taught Alara how to fish badly. She taught him how to identify bird calls, which was hilarious given her fear of birds. "You're afraid of them, but you study them?" Adrian asked, watching her point out a hawk circling overhead, while simultaneously refusing to get anywhere near it. "Know your enemy," Alara said seriously. They came back to the city tanned and relaxed and ready to figure out what normal life looked like. Alara went back to her veterinary practice, which had somehow survived 8 months of her sporadic attention. Her practice manager had questions, so many questions, but Alara answered them honestly. The contract had ended months ago, but the marriage was real. The danger was over, but the love had stayed. Adrian started a new company, not import-export or real estate or anything connected to his father's empire. He started a foundation that helped people leave organized crime, that provided legal support and financial resources and job training for anyone trying to build a life outside the networks they'd been born into. "It's what someone should have done for me," he told Alara. "When my father died and I inherited everything, someone should have shown me there was another option besides running his empire or destroying myself trying to dismantle it. The foundation grew quickly. Within a year, they'd helped dozens of people. Within 2 years, they had offices in 3 cities. Adrian threw himself into it with the same intensity he'd once used to survive his father's world, but this time it was building instead of destroying. Alara watched him transform from a man trying to escape his past into someone creating a future, and it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. They had their first real fight 18 months after the wedding, when Alara wanted to adopt a dog, and Adrian pointed out that their penthouse wasn't exactly pet-friendly. "Then we'll move," Alara said. "Get a house with a yard, somewhere the dog can run." "You want to leave the penthouse?" "Adrian, we've been talking about leaving that place since we met. You hate it. It reminds you of your father. Why are we still living there?" He didn't have a good answer. The next week, they started house hunting. They found a place in the suburbs, nothing like Adrian's usual style. It was normal-sized with a fenced yard and neighbors who brought over casseroles and didn't know or care about Marcus Voss or Konstantin Volkov or any of it. "It's perfect," Alara said, standing in the empty living room. "It's small," Adrian countered, "and the kitchen is outdated, and I'm pretty sure that's mold in the basement." "It's perfect," she repeated, "because it's ours. Not your father's, not part of some performance, just ours." They moved in 3 months later. The dog, a rescue mutt named Charlie, who was afraid of everything, came a week after that. Adrian, who'd once commanded criminal empires and negotiated with violent men without flinching, was completely defeated by a 30-pound dog who barked at his own shadow. "He hates me," Adrian said, watching Charlie hide under the couch for the 3rd day in a row. "He doesn't hate you. He's scared. He had a bad life before we got him, and he doesn't trust easily." Alara sat on the floor next to the couch. "Sound familiar?" Adrian sat beside her. "That's not fair." "It's completely fair." It took Charlie 3 weeks to come out from under the couch consistently. Another month before he'd let Adrian pet him. 6 months before he'd sleep in their bed. But the day Adrian came home and Charlie actually ran to greet him, tail wagging, Alara saw tears in her husband's eyes. "I think he likes me now," Adrian said, kneeling down to pet the dog. "I think he loves you. He just had to learn that you weren't going to hurt him." Adrian looked up at her. "Like you did." "Like I did," she agreed. They built a life that was aggressively normal. Adrian coached Little League baseball for the neighborhood kids. Alara volunteered at the animal shelter. They had friends over for dinner and forgot to call them back and argued about whose turn it was to do dishes. It was boring and domestic and everything Adrian had never imagined having. "I love this," he said one Saturday morning, watching Alara try to teach Charlie to roll over while burning pancakes in the kitchen. "Love what? The chaos? All of it? The house? The dog? The burnt food? You." He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "I love the boring normal life we built. I love that the most exciting thing that happened this week was Charlie learning to sit. I love that I'm not looking over my shoulder anymore." Alara turned in his arms. "No regrets? About leaving your father's world? About the money you gave away? About choosing this instead?" "Not one single regret." He kissed her forehead. "Except maybe that I didn't meet you sooner. If you'd met me sooner, you would have been a criminal and I would have run screaming." Fair point. The foundation continued to grow. 3 years after Adrian started it, they were operating in 7 cities and had helped over 200 people leave criminal organizations. Some of them were success stories, people who rebuilt their lives, got legitimate jobs, reconnected with families they'd lost. Some of them failed, went back to their old lives because the pull was too strong, or the straight world was too hard, or they just didn't have Adrian's resources and determination. The failures hurt Adrian more than he admitted. "You can't save everyone," Alara told him after one particularly hard case, a young man who'd promised to testify against his former associates, then recanted and disappeared back into the network. "I know, but I have to try." "Why? Why do you take every failure so personally?" Adrian was quiet for a long time. "Because I was lucky. I had money, education, Catherine, you. I had resources that most people trying to leave this life don't have. And if I can't use those resources to help people who didn't get lucky, what's the point of any of it?" Alara understood then that this wasn't just about redemption for Adrian. It was about proving that the choice he'd made, to leave, to change, to be better, was possible for other people too. That his story wasn't just a fluke, Wasn't just privilege and luck making the impossible easy. You are helping people, she said. Even the ones who go back. They know now that leaving is possible, that someone will help them if they're ready. That matters, Adrian, even when it doesn't feel like enough. He pulled her close, and she felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. How did I get so lucky? He murmured. To find you in that hotel bar? You didn't find me. You desperately grabbed the nearest stranger and dragged her into your mess. Best desperate decision I ever made. 4 years after the wedding, Alara got pregnant. It wasn't planned. They'd talked about kids in that vague, someday way, but hadn't actively tried. But when she saw the positive test, the first thing she felt was joy. Adrian cried when she told him, actual tears streaming down his face, arms around her, shaking with emotion. We're going to have a baby, he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. We are. You okay with that? I'm terrified. What if I'm like my father? What if I mess this up? What if... Adrian? She pulled back to look at him. You coach Little League. You can't walk past a stray dog without trying to help it. You've spent 4 years building a foundation to help people escape the life your father pushed them into. You are nothing like him. But what if the kid inherits... Inherits what? Your stubbornness? Your dedication? Your annoying habit of overthinking everything? She smiled. Those are your traits, Adrian, not your father's. You get to decide what kind of parent you'll be, just like you decided what kind of person you'd be. The pregnancy was normal and boring in the best way. No drama, no complications, just 9 months of Alara getting progressively larger while Adrian read every parenting book ever written and drove her slightly insane with his preparations. Their daughter was born on a Tuesday in March, screaming and red-faced and perfect. They named her Grace. Not after anyone in particular, just because they both liked it. Because she was their fresh start, their proof that people could build something good even when they came from bad places. Adrian held her in the hospital, staring down at her tiny face with an expression of absolute wonder. Hi, Grace, he whispered. I'm your dad, and I promise I'm going to do better than my father did. I'm going to love you and protect you and show you that you can be whoever you want to be. You don't have to carry anyone's legacy but your own. Alara watched him make promises to their daughter and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. This was what they'd fought for. This quiet moment in a hospital room, holding their child, building a family that had nothing to do with violence or fear or inherited obligations. This was what redemption looked like. Grace grew up in the suburban house with the yard and the slightly moldy basement that Adrian had eventually fixed. She learned to walk holding on to Charlie, who'd transformed from a terrified rescue into a patient, gentle companion. She learned that her father ran a foundation helping people, that her mother fixed sick animals, that family meant choosing to show up for each other even when it was hard. On her 5th birthday, Adrian took Alara aside while the party was happening in the backyard. I need to tell you something, he said. Alara's stomach dropped. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything's right. That's the point. He took her hand. I've been thinking about that night we met, about the choice you made to help me when you had every reason to run. And I realized something. What? You didn't just save my life that night. You showed me what it looked like to choose the hard thing because it was right. To risk yourself for someone else without knowing if it would work out. Everything I've built since then, the foundation, the life we have, being Grace's father, it all started because you chose to be brave when I was desperate and scared. Alara's eyes stung. Adrian, let me finish. I want Grace to grow up knowing that story. Not the sanitized version, but the real one. That her father was part of a criminal empire. That he made mistakes and hurt people and had to spend years making it right. That her mother was a veterinarian who helped a stranger and ended up changing both their lives. He squeezed her hand. I want her to know that people can change. That your past doesn't have to define your future. That choosing to be better is always possible, even when it seems impossible. That's a lot of pressure for a 5-year-old. Not right now, but someday, when she's old enough to understand. Adrian looked out at the backyard where Grace was running around with her friends and Charlie was barking joyfully. I want her to know that she comes from people who chose to be better, who fought for the right thing even when it cost them everything. Because that's the only legacy worth passing on. Alara leaned against him, watching their daughter play, and thought about the terrified veterinarian who'd sat in a hotel bar one night and made a choice that changed everything. She thought she was just helping a stranger avoid some trouble. She hadn't known she was stepping into a story about redemption and love and the hard work of becoming someone new. But looking at the life they'd built, the house, the foundation, the family, she wouldn't change a single moment, even the scary ones, even the times she'd been sure they wouldn't survive, even the performance that had slowly, inevitably become the truest thing in her life. "We did good," she said quietly. "We did," Adrian agreed. "And we're not done yet." The foundation expanded. By the time Grace was 10, they were operating in 15 cities with a staff of over 100. They'd helped more than 1,000 people leave criminal organizations, had provided legal support and financial resources and job training and therapy for trauma that ran generations deep. Some of those people succeeded, built new lives, reconnected with families, found peace. Some of them failed and went back. The pull was too strong, the straight world too hard, the trauma too deep to overcome. Adrian still took every failure personally, still stayed up nights wondering what he could have done differently, how he could have helped more. "You're one person," Ilara reminded him. "You can't fix everything your father broke." "I know, but I have to try." It became his life's work. Not running businesses or making money or building power, just helping people find the exit from a world that trapped them. And along the way, he helped himself too. Proved that leaving was possible, that you could come from violence and choose peace, that redemption wasn't a single moment but a lifetime of small choices to be better than you were before. Grace grew up watching her father work on the foundation, grew up knowing that he'd once been part of the world he was now fighting against. When she was 13, she asked him about it directly. "Were you a bad person?" she asked over dinner one night. Adrian set down his fork, looked at his daughter seriously. "I was part of bad things. I made choices I regret. I hurt people, directly and indirectly, because I didn't have the courage to walk away from what my father built. But you changed. I'm changing every day. I'll probably spend the rest of my life trying to make up for the things I did and didn't do." He paused. "But yes, I changed because your mom showed me it was possible, and because I decided that who I was didn't have to be who I stayed." Grace thought about that. "Is that why you started the foundation? To help other people change too?" "Partly, but also because I was lucky. I had resources and support and people who believed I could be better. Not everyone has that. So if I can give other people the same chance I got, that seems like the least I can do." "I think that's cool," Grace said. "What you do? Helping people." Adrian's eyes got that misty look they got whenever Grace said something particularly grown up. "Thanks, kiddo. That means a lot." Later that night, after Grace was in bed, Ilara found Adrian on the back porch, looking out at the yard where Charlie was chasing shadows. "You okay?" she asked, sitting beside him. Grace asked me if I was a bad person, and I didn't know how to answer her without either lying or scaring her. "I think you answered perfectly. You told her the truth, that you made mistakes and you're trying to be better. That's all any of us can do. Is it enough to just try? Or should I have, hidden that part of my life from her? Let her grow up thinking I was always good?" "Kids aren't stupid. They figure out when you're lying to them. And besides," Ilara took his hand, "Grace is growing up in a world where people make mistakes, where life is complicated and choices are hard. Showing her that it's possible to mess up and still become someone good, that's the most valuable thing you can teach her." Adrian pulled her close. "When did you get so wise?" "I've been wise this whole time. You just finally started listening." He laughed, and the sound was lighter than it had been in years. They sat on the porch until the stars came out, talking about nothing and everything, comfortable in the silence between words. This was the life they'd built. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and honest in theirs. And it was enough. Years passed. Grace went to college, studied social work, came home talking about systemic injustice and reform and making the world better. She joined the foundation after graduation, bringing new ideas and energy and a perspective that only someone who'd grown up knowing both sides could have. Adrian watched his daughter throw herself into the work he'd started and felt something in his chest loosen. The legacy he was leaving wasn't money or power or fear. It was this: a daughter who believed people could change, who wanted to help them, who'd learned that your past didn't have to define your future because she'd watched her father prove it every single day. "I'm proud of you," he told Grace on her first day officially working at the foundation. "I'm proud of you too, Dad, for building this, for being brave enough to leave the life you were born into." "I didn't do it alone. Your mom—" "I know. Mom tells the story all the time. How you met in a hotel bar and she pretended to be your fiancée, and it was all supposed to be fake, but it became real." Grace smiled. "It's actually kind of romantic, in a totally insane, dangerous way. That's one way to describe it. How would you describe it?" Adrian thought about that hotel bar, about Alara's hand in his, about the performance that became the realest thing in his life. "Lucky," he said finally. "I'd describe it as the luckiest night of my life." Alara retired from her veterinary practice at 60, ready to spend more time with Adrian and less time elbow-deep in sick animals. They traveled, visiting the Foundation's offices across the country, meeting the people whose lives had been changed by the work Adrian had started decades ago. Some of those people were success stories. Lawyers and teachers and business owners who'd left criminal networks and built honest lives. They thanked Adrian with tears in their eyes, told him he'd saved them, called him a hero. Adrian always deflected, told them they'd saved themselves, he'd just shown them the door. But Alara saw the way he carried those stories with him, saw the way each success became a small counterweight to the failures that still haunted him. One afternoon, 25 years after that night in the hotel bar, they were back in the city where it all started. The penthouse had been sold years ago. The warehouse that burned was now a community center the foundation had funded, and Konstantin Volkov had died in prison 3 years prior. Adrian stood outside the Grand Meridian Hotel, looking at the entrance. "Want to go in?" Alara asked. "I don't know. It feels strange, going back to where it started." "Then let's do it. Face the ghosts." They walked into the hotel bar together. It looked exactly the same: leather stools, polished counter, ambient lighting that made everything feel slightly unreal. A different bartender, of course. Marcus had moved to Denver years ago. They sat at the bar, in almost the exact same spots they'd sat in 25 years earlier. "What can I get you?" the bartender asked. "Gin and tonic," Alara said, "and whatever he's drinking." Adrian smiled. "Beer. Something cheap and simple." The bartender looked confused. This was a 5-star hotel. They didn't serve cheap beer, but Adrian pulled out his wallet and handed over enough cash to make it worth finding some. When their drinks came, they raised their glasses. "To terrible decisions," Adrian said. "To surviving them," Alara countered, like she had 25 years ago. They drank, and Alara looked at her husband, gray at the temples now, laugh lines around his eyes, hands that had built a foundation instead of an empire. "Any regrets?" she asked. "Just one." Her stomach dropped. "What?" "That I didn't ask you out for real that first night. That I wasted 6 months of a fake relationship when we could have been building something real from the start." Alara laughed, relieved and in love, and so grateful for the stranger who'd slid a ring across a bar and whispered a desperate request. "I don't think I would have said yes if you'd asked me out normally. I needed the insanity to take the risk." "Fair point." Adrian set down his glass. "But we're here now. We made it." "We made it," Alara agreed. And looking around the bar where it all started, where she'd made a choice that terrified her, where she'd stepped into a lie that became her truth, where she'd met a man trying desperately to be better than his past, Alara understood something fundamental about redemption. It wasn't a single moment. It wasn't one brave choice or one grand gesture. It was 25 years of small decisions to show up, to be honest, to choose love over fear and hope over cynicism. It was Adrian building a foundation instead of an empire. It was teaching their daughter that people could change. It was sitting in a hotel bar with gray hair and old stories and the kind of love that came from surviving impossible things together. That was redemption, not dramatic or perfect or easy, just real and hard and worth every terrifying second. "You know what I think?" Alara said, taking Adrian's hand. "What?" "I think you were never your father's son. You were always just you, trying to figure out how to be good in a world that taught you to be hard. And you did it. You figured it out." Adrian's eyes were bright. "We did it. Together." "Together," she agreed. They finished their drinks and walked out of the Grand Meridian Hotel hand in hand, leaving behind the ghosts of who they'd been and stepping into the life they'd built from desperation, hope, and the reckless courage to believe that change was always possible, even when it seemed impossible, especially then. Behind them, the bar continued its quiet business, unaware that 25 years ago, two strangers had sat in those exact seats and made choices that would ripple through decades, through lives saved and families built, and the stubborn, beautiful belief that your past didn't have to be your future. That legacy wasn't something you inherited. It was something you chose every single day until the choosing became who you were. And that was the story worth telling. Not the dramatic parts, not the danger or the fear or the performances, but the quiet truth that two imperfect people had found each other in chaos and decided against all odds, against all reason, to build something better together. That was the story their daughter would tell her own children someday. The story of how redemption wasn't clean or easy, but it was always, always possible, for anyone brave enough to choose it,